5:50, and this being the Plymouth Select Board, I will call to order this, the first part of tonight's meeting of the Select Board at 5:50 p.m. The Select Board will hold an executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30, Section 21A, Clause 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant in aid requirements, and will reconvene in open session at the conclusion of the executive session. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bletzer has moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none from members of the board, call for the vote alphabetically through the roll. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote as to whether or not we should enter into executive session?
Yes.
Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We are in executive session. We will reconvene in open session at the conclusion of this executive. I will call to order this, the Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 meeting of Plymouth Select Board. Please join the board in a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to modifications made to the open meeting law by the legislature of the Commonwealth in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the board that are in attendance are joining us physically at the Great Hall here at Town Hall. Members of the public who wish to participate or watch this meeting may join us at the Great Hall at Town Hall, or may participate remotely via Zoom. The Zoom login information is included on our posted agenda on the town website. All right, so that brings us into our agenda proper. We are beginning tonight's meeting with a public hearing. We'll read the notice. In accordance with Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws, as amended, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at the Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street, on Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, at 6 p.m., to consider the application for an annual all-alcohol restaurant license from K. Katie's Incorporated, doing business as P. Papa's Pizza Bar, 38 Main Street, Plymouth, Amy Hurst as manager. Description of the premises is as follows: single floor with kitchen, dining room, and bar. Additional seating outside on the sidewalk against the building. Handicap accessible, men and ladies' restrooms, as well as a staff restroom. 1 entrance and 3 exits. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter should plan to attend this meeting. We'll call to order the public hearing on this license application at this time. Do we have anyone in attendance wishing to speak on behalf of the applicant? Hearing and seeing none. Do we have anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Hearing and seeing none. Do we have anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Hearing and seeing none. What is the pleasure of the board? Do we have any questions that we'd like answered, or did anyone wish to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Bletzer.
So I thought that the petitioner would be here tonight, but I did have questions, and what I did today is I called Lisa Johnson down at the Town Hall, our license agent, and because I was kind of confused, but I understand now completely. I got the answers that I was looking for. Katie's is taking over the Papagenos. We transferred the license over to Somerset Street. It's not open yet. In fact, I can tell you, they've done a great job renovating. It looks real good. But they're not ready to open there, so they're still, they're ready with that license transfer. So what they're doing now is they're gonna take the old Katie's and they're gonna shut that down when the other place opens, and they're gonna open up this Papa's Pizza. And that's what they're looking for a license. So they're looking, and I asked Lisa if this was legal and everything, and she said it was. It's gonna take a little time. If we okay it tonight, then it goes to the ABC. By that time, the other place will be open as Katie's. And this will be renovated to be Papa's Pizza. So that's what this is about tonight. It was confusing because I knew we already transferred Katie's, but, and I actually thought Papa's Pizza was going over there, but it's going to the
Current.
Main Street Extension. So,
Okay.
so that's what's going on. I thought Keith would be here tonight, the owner, to answer questions.
That's right.
Mr. Brindisi, anything to
Yeah,
add?
through the chair, to Mr. Bletzer's point, typically, we ask the petitioner to come here and answer questions. When they fail to attend, it's been common practice that the board tables this for a future meeting.
We don't have the applicant on Zoom by chance, do we? We do not. Well,
I can say I'm prepared because I understand it, but if the rest of the board doesn't, I understand that too. But I'm prepared to vote tonight if you guys are ready.
Mr. Helm.
I think our proper procedures have been that when the petitioner does not show up for a public hearing, that we postpone it until they are able to show up. And I understand, Charlie, you did some good research on it, but it doesn't change the fact that the owner or owners of Katie's or Papa's have determined not to show up tonight. So I will not be voting for this if it goes to a vote.
I will say that I am inclined to agree with Mr. Helm. I think it would set a bad precedent if we were to have public hearings without people here to answer questions. Even if we don't have that many questions, the precedent that it sets, the expectation that you could not show up is, in my view, not favorable. So I would suggest that we not take any action this evening and instead give them a future opportunity to ideally show up and answer any questions that we may have. And we should, I think, continue, move on without approving either the all-annual license or the associated licenses, and do it all at the time that we take it up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, if he's under a timetable to, this is gonna delay him. So if he's out there and he sees this,
Come running.
yeah, come down.
We're here.
Yeah. We are here. We are, as I said at the beginning, we are at 26 Main Court Street, and we're here to have this hearing at the Great Hall. And you can even join us via Zoom if you'd like, but you're not here now, so I think we're in a position where we have to move forward. All right, so we will take no action on the public hearing for this. At the time being, I will call a public hearing closed. If the applicant is to walk in, we could reopen it, but I don't want to take any action at this time, personally. All right, so that brings us into licenses and administrative notes. First things first is we have some licenses. We have from the Wildlands Trust, Plymouth Patuxent Museums, and Red Robin International Incorporated. Does anyone have any questions on any of those, or do I have a motion to approve them as a group?
Motion to approve as a group.
Second.
All right, Mr. Helm has moved, Mr. Bletzer has seconded. Any discussion about these licenses before I call for the vote? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote? Yes, no, or abstain?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. We have approved the licenses. Thank you. That brings us into administrative notes. Administrative notes has a number of items within it this evening, including at the outset a number of meeting minutes that we are aspiring to approve, some of which we will be able to approve this evening, some of which we will not. I'd like to first take a look at administrative notes 1 through 20. These are the administrative notes that precede my election to the board, so I know that I intend to abstain from those particular votes. Are there any other votes in regards to numbers 1 through 20 that any other members of the board would abstain from? Mr. Helm?
I will be abstaining number 11 through 20. I
Okay.
will be voting on 1 through 10. The reason is due to the heavy quantity of meeting notes, I was unable to review all of them.
Understood, Mr. Helm. And Mr. Bletzer, are there any of the meeting minutes listed 1 through 20 that you would be abstaining from?
Yes, I've had time to read all of the notes, and I realize that I have conflicts on February 21st, February 28th, because I wasn't at those meetings. That's number 12 and number 13. And as a matter of fact, on the 28th, which is number 13, it shows me making a motion, which obviously I couldn't make that, I wasn't there, so those, and when's May 9th, which, May 9th, also number
19?
19, I can't vote, I have to abstain on that too. I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay, fair enough. So with that in mind, we have two groupings that we could vote upon. Let's first take administrative notes 1 through 10. Mr. Helm, would you care to make a motion that we approve administrative notes 1 through 10 as a group?
Yes, I make that motion. I do have a comment on number 7, January 3rd.
Okay, so I will come back to Mr. Helm. Mr. Bletzer, would you care to second Mr. Helm's motion?
I will second that.
All right, in terms of anything you would like to add, edit, alter, or otherwise change in regards to the proposed meeting minutes, which meeting minutes and what would you like to change?
Meeting minutes number 7, January 3rd, 2023, on page 4 of 8, under the agreement with Claremont Plymouth LLC. Mr. Brandisi noted that Claremont Development represents an estimated $30,000 gallons compared to $1 million gallons per day, firm capacity definite. I think that the dollar signs are not meant to be there and should be removed.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add, edit, alter, or otherwise change in regards to these 10 sets of meeting minutes? Nope. Mr. Bletzer, do you have anything you would like to add, edit, alter, or otherwise change in regards to these 10 sets?
I don't, I'm satisfied.
All right. Mr. Helm, would you care to update your motion to incorporate that edit that you just elucidated?
Yes, I will update my motion to include the changes on page 4 of 8 of the January 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes.
And Mr. Bletzer, would you care to second that updated motion?
I'll second that.
It has been moved, it has been seconded. Any discussion as to whether or not we should approve administrative notes 1 through 10, these sets of meeting minutes at this time? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for the vote. Once again, through the roll, yes, no, or abstain when I reach your name. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote as to whether or not we should approve these meeting minutes? Yes, no, or abstain?
Yes.
And Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I will abstain. All right. So that brings us to the next grouping before my arrival. That would be a grouping that could be made of 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 20. Mr. Bletzer, would you care to make a motion?
I will. I'll make that motion that we approve those meetings.
All right. And I will second that motion. It has been moved, it has been seconded. Mr. Bletzer, do you have anything you would like to add, edit, alter, or otherwise change for those sets of meeting minutes before I solicit a
No, I'm satisfied.
all right. And Mr. Helm, anything further to add?
No.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. Once again, alphabetically through the roll. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote? Yes,
Yes.
no? Yes, okay. Mr. Helm?
Abstain?
All right, and I will abstain. We'll note for the record that under Robert's Rules of Order, abstentions do not count as votes, and a majority of votes cast need to be approved, need to be in favor in order for something to pass. So despite the fact that only one member of the board is voting, nevertheless, they can be approved with that one vote, given the other two abstentions. All right, so that brings us to administrative notes 21 through 25. This is after I joined the board, very exciting. So, does anyone have anything they would like to add, edit, alter, or otherwise change in regards to administrative notes 21 through 25's meeting minutes before I solicit a motion for their approval? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Bletzer, would you care to make a motion that we approve meeting minutes?
Yes, I'll make that motion to approve those meetings.
All right, so 21 through 25 is moved. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for the vote. Yes, no, or abstain when I reach your name. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
All right. Mr. Helm?
Abstain?
All right, and I vote yes. So we have approved those meeting minutes as well. The ones that are left unapproved will join presumably next week's agenda to be approved at that time. That brings us to the remaining administrative notes, those being administrative notes 26 through 36. Does anyone have any questions on these meeting minutes, rather on these administrative notes, before I solicit a motion to approve them as a group? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Bletzer, would you care to make a motion that we approve administrative notes 26 through 36 as a group?
Yes, I would. I'll make that motion.
All right, Mr. Helm, would you care to second?
Yes, I'll second.
It has been moved, it has been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
All right, Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. We have approved administrative notes 26 through 36.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment
You may?
on, we had some appointments in there there were 3 seats, 3 appointments, so that we didn't interview, but we appointed Mr. Lawler, Mr. Golden, and Mr. Leiden to the Memorial Committee. And this was a committee that we had going, and then it just, for whatever, it dissolved. And it's a very important committee. As a matter of fact, right now, we have probably 3 or 4 requests for this committee. So I encourage, I can see 2 of the candidates here tonight. I thought all 3 would be here, but, all 3 are here. So I encourage you gentlemen to get a meeting as soon as you can. And I know Anthony's got the guidelines and everything, and I'm sure you've already seen them, but we need to get a meeting as soon as possible to, so these folks can come before you and tell you what they'd like to do. So, and thank you for applying. I appreciate it. So we appreciate it. The town does. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bletzer. All right, no other comments on the administrative notes before we move forward? Hearing and seeing none, we will move forward. Next item on the agenda is a statement of the Select Board regarding the Attorney General's open meeting law determination. So, for anyone watching and those in the know, the Select Board of Plymouth did receive a determination from the Attorney General's office that the Select Board had violated the open meeting law back on November 15th of 2022. It is important to highlight 2 things out of the determination that was received. First, that the Attorney General's office found that this violation of the open meeting law was unintentional. And second, that we heard that what the Attorney General's office said, and we will be mindful of their determination and the reasons for it going forward. Circling back to the first of those 2, that this violation was unintentional. The Attorney General's office could have fined the board, could have reversed the decision that was reached at the meeting that was held on November 15th, 2022, or taken any other remedial action. but they chose not to do so because the violation that the board conducted was deemed to be unintentional. Instead, the Attorney General's office ordered the Select Board to update our meeting minutes, which we've just done, and to take a webinar training, which some of us have already completed, so that we can comply better with the open meeting law going forward. But second, of course, we did hear what the Attorney General's office said. We will incorporate that into our practices and policies going forward. This was an unintentional violation, and we look forward to continuing our important work for the benefit of Plymouth's residents. That is all at this time, but thank you everyone for your interest. We have heard what you've had to say, and we look forward to moving forward together to serve the community. All right. That brings us into... At public comment, you will have 3 minutes to speak, if you wish. All right, so that brings us into the Plymouth Public Library Fiscal Year 2023 Annual Report from the Library Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Bill Petrillo. I'm the president of the Board of Directors for the Plymouth Public Library. On behalf of our library director, Kelsey Casey, who took ill today and couldn't be here, and the Board of Directors, thank you, Select Board, for allowing us to be on the agenda tonight. I'm also having cataract surgery tomorrow, so I can't see the slides. So we're still going to get through this. We want to cover 3 things tonight. We want to tell you what we've been up to for the past 150 years, a little bit about the Board of Directors and the foundation. I promise this is only going to take about 5 minutes. And we want to tell you some of the things the library and the board and the foundation have achieved over the past year. And third, some of the things that are important to us going forward that we need everybody's support on. So without further ado, back in 1811, a bunch of irate Plymouth citizens rose up and demanded a lending library. And they were very successful in putting together a lending library, and from that day forward, library services in Plymouth were founded. Flash forward to today. You folks probably haven't heard much about the Board of Directors and the Library Foundation. The library's not in the news a lot, and that's a good thing. I mean, if you look across the United States, libraries are always in the news. People are burning books, there's bills of rights, there's all kinds of issues. So kudos to the board and to the foundation and to the library leadership in giving us some well-functioning library services over the past 150 years. Over that course of history, the foundation and the board of directors, in working with the library in town, have formed a great partnership. We've done a lot of cool things. If you look at that next to last column, that's a list of all the buildings the library has been in over the 150 years. And a lot of those buildings were actually purchased by the foundation and given over to the town to use as a library. And as recently back in 1985, another great example, the library board of directors and the foundation, working with the library director, formed a commission to plan out what the library needs for the town of Plymouth would be over the next 50 years. They formed that commission, they produced the master plan, they went out and raised money through a funding campaign to purchase the land that the library sits on these days. Then they hired an architect, they helped push funding approval through the town with 2 override votes, and they got some additional state approval, and voila, we have today's building at South Street location. We even hired the builder, and it's a great example of a really great partnership. At the end of the project, it's one of the few projects I've heard of that came in $1 million under budget and on time, which is very rare these days. So a lot of great things. So, the Board of Directors, this is a list of our main responsibilities. The Board of Directors for your library consists of 13 accomplished professionals. They work on the board on a volunteer basis. They have no political agenda. Their sole mission is to advocate for library services for all Plymouthians. They also defend the library Bill of Rights to make sure that everybody has equal access to the library and to books. They provide advisory input on high-level library policy and important issues that arise. They are responsible for managing the foundation on a day-to-day basis, and they act as a trustee for people who donate endowments and business sponsors who provide funding for some of the library programs that the library is able to offer. And finally, they act as a trustee for all Plymouthians to make sure that the library continues to meet the needs of the citizens of Plymouth. Some of the things that we accomplished over the past year include literacy programming support. One of the administrative notes you folks just approved was accepting a $321,000 grant from the state to help fund the literacy program. The literacy program is regionally renowned, right? It offers English as a second language, it offers GED programs, and we've even reached out recently to Senator Moran, and Senator Moran has put through a state resolution recognizing the effectiveness of Plymouth's libraries literacy program. So that's a great accomplishment that speaks well of the town and the library, the board, and the foundation. In addition, we were able to supplement the town and state aid to the tune of $70,000 this year that the foundation contributed to the library to provide for extra cultural and children's programming, educational support. We have started a project to renovate the garden in the back of the library that all citizens can use. We've had several historical preservation exhibits throughout the year at the library, and we continue to promote library services throughout the town. In addition to this, the library has had a pretty good year, right? They've accomplished putting together a 5-year strategic plan that they've run by the Mass Retirement Law Commission, Retirement Library Commission. We've been able to purchase 2 new meeting pods where people can meet in private and work on computers or take telephone calls in private at the library. We put a tiny library at the Wampanoag facility in South Plymouth. We kicked off a summer reading program, and the library also put together a community garden. Some of the highlights of what we've achieved this year. All right, one of the things we're most proud of and spend a heck of a lot of time on, we like to term it as making friends and engaging supporters, right? The more people that we can draw into the library, make aware of the services, and that we can educate them on the importance of the library, the more ambassadors we can build throughout the town. And this is kind of how we do it. We hold a lot of events. The foundation holds a lot of events throughout the year. One of our premier events is the Art Festival. So if anybody's got free time, September 9th and September 10th this year, we will have, this year, we've doubled the size of it. We're going to have 85 artists at the festival, food, music, and about 5,000 people are going to come to Plymouth. It's partly funded by the Town of Plymouth Promotions. We've got the whole town and region in back of this. It should be a great event. We have an annual appeal where we reach out to citizens of Plymouth to help fund the additional programming that we supply. We have a guild program for people who are able and willing to contribute even more to some of these programs. We run a Tee It Up for Literacy golf tournament each year, and this allows us to provide more funding for the literacy program. We have art galleries, our signature Taste of the Town event where all citizens can gather and enjoy food from the top 20 or so restaurants throughout Plymouth. We engage donors and business sponsors to help out. We have a newsletter, and we team up with other nonprofits in the area, such as the Phil for a concert on the front lawn. And finally, we have our Shred It event. Okay, and this last year, we were able to bring in 174,000 people to the library. Maybe some of those people came more than once, but 174,000 people did walk through the doors. So that was a pretty successful year. So what's ahead of us? All right, ahead of us, some of the things that are important to us is number one, the library is no different than a lot of companies and other organizations. These days, a lot of people are struggling maintaining appropriate levels of staffing. That's always a challenge for the library. Right now, we have several open requisitions. So whenever we have to approve funding for an additional position or get a position filled, that's very important for the library and to continue to deliver the services that we do. In addition, we can always use help encouraging businesses to support the effort, right? We have a few great sponsors like Tech Etch and Bridgewater Credit Union, who sponsor some of the programs at the library. So whenever we come across businesses as a team here that may want to provide additional support for the library, certainly steer them our way. That's very important to us. We want to get more involved with making the library a showcase for energy conservation. We started discussions with Everett Malaguti and the Energy Committee on ways to do that, whether it's by solar panels or a energy screen as you enter the library. So we'll be continuing to meet with Everett and his committee on that. And last but certainly not least, we definitely want to be very much engaged in the current initiative for health and human services. There's a lot of things, especially things that are of an educational nature, that the library can do to help the cause here, right? I mean, we love educating people, whether it's English as a second language or getting their GED, helping them put together resumes to get jobs, helping them understand how to garden in a sustainable way. So there's just a lot of things that the library can help out with this cause. And I know Jay Gardner is, we're going to meet with him tomorrow at our board meeting and start talking about some of those. Okay. Well, I wanted to keep the presentation short, just in case you guys had any questions, because it's been 150 years since we've talked to you, so we figured, it was about time.
Well, you covered a lot of ground shortly,
Yep.
so feel free to come slightly more often.
Okay.
Any questions, Mr. Bletzer?
Yes, so you're going to be working with the Human Service Departments? It's-
Yes, we've
which
had
is a-
discussions with Derek, and we're meeting,
Which is a-
Jay's going to join our board, and I think it's early on in the process, but you guys are going to tell us where you're going, and we want to
It's
see
ex-
how we
well,
can fit in.
It's exciting because that's a new department that our town manager has created, and I think it's a long time coming. We've needed that. I'm a big proponent of the library. I think it's so important, not just, it's good to the seniors, but the youth. I know the youth. I know my daughters through the years have used it for research, and I read 2 books a week, so I'm an avid. I'm part of that 174,000.
Okay, well, we have a big program coming up. You should join this, Mr. Blitzer, right? It's the North versus the South, and it's going to be a big reading contest. So you either join the North team or the South team, and the teams are going to go at it, and we'll see who can read the most books by the end of the year. So everybody keep an eye open for that. Your 2 books could put us over the top. Join the North. The North is the good team, Mr.
It's
Blitzer.
even more now,
Right.
but anyway, so great work. Thank you for the
Well, thank
presentation.
you.
So, yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none, I will just say thank you for coming. We appreciate the update, and feel free to come back every, say, 10 years or so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, during that presentation, I did hear indirectly from the Cadies, from the applicant for that public hearing that we were going to have earlier. The applicant believed that the hearing was on September 5th, so apologizes for not joining us this evening, but if we were to postpone the hearing until September 5th, would be able to join us at that time. So if there's no objection from the rest of the board, I would suggest that we plan to postpone until September 5th, of course, pending the approval of Chairman Quintal when he takes back the gavel. But any objections to that?
So we just take no action?
Take no action and plan to postpone to September 5th. Okay? All right, thank you, and we do appreciate the Cadies for reaching out to us to clarify that for us. All right, so that brings us to the next item on our agenda, that being an American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, request from Mr. David Gould, the Director of Environmental Affairs. Mr. Gould.
Good evening. I'm here, unfortunately, to ask for some ARPA funding for the Stevens Field project. I think most folks in the community were pretty excited when the project went out to bid. Obviously, due to long delays in the project, we had some concerns about what those bids might actually be. I provided you with a memo as well as the ARPA request, and I'll just go over that very briefly, and then if you have any questions, I will attempt to answer those. Essentially, we had $4.5 million in the available budget. The low bid was from RAD Sports at 3.8. We had Emmy O'Brien, which is an existing vendor that has state contracts that we were going to use for our playground equipment, the building, as well as other site amenities like benches, the rubber matting underneath the playground. And all of that totaled just under $900,000. We had some costs for demo disposal for the LSP construction oversight and DEP compliance. Beals and Thomas was already, which is the engineering firm, was already under contract for construction oversight. So when you took all those numbers and added them up, they came to a little over 4.8, leaving us at $334,000 over the available budget. I then included several bid alternates. We utilized bid alternates in this bid in the hope that we would be able to utilize them if the budget was to come under, and we could put some additional work into the project. So if you include bid alternate 1, which was a concrete turnaround for the boat ramp, as well as the new backstop and sideline fence at the softball field, which is bid alternate 2. Bid alternate 3 was to take the asphalt basketball court, mill, overlay, and paint that. That equated to about $181,000. So when you add in the budget deficit plus those 3 bid alternates, that totals $515,000. So the request before you is to use $1 million in ARPA funds to cover that deficit and then provide us with some ability to have contingency in that project. As you all know, there are some significant soil issues out there. I think we've done a pretty in-depth analysis out there and have a pretty good knowledge of what's out there, but whenever you're doing subsurface work, you need to have some level of contingency available. So that is the request that we have before you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gould. Mr. Bletzer, question?
Yes, David, thank you. I see at 515, you're asking for $1 million. Is that just in case you need more?
That is for a contingency.
Do you anticipate,
I think our biggest concern with contingency funds is the subsurface area. So we know there are areas there that have urban fill, that have petroleum impacted soils. Hopefully, those are pretty accurate to what we've sampled out there, but we want to make sure that we address any issues that come up. So that would be mainly for that.
the reason why I bring this up is we don't have a lot left in ARPA, and we have so many needs. And, yeah, I mean, obviously Stevens Field, but everybody in this room, we all want this completed. We've been waiting for 10 years or whatever to get this completed. And everybody wants to see this get done, and done right, too. So, but I'm just hoping that we don't have to use all that $1 million, because there's so many needs, ARPA needs out there.
I couldn't agree more.
So,
I hope we don't have to either.
right, okay, great. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Helm?
A few of them.
Okay.
So, rather than assume, I'm just going to ask you to confirm, there were contingencies in both of the 2 previous allocations of funding, and they've been completely, were there contingencies in those allocations of funding? Because we've had 2 so far to bring us to the 4.5.
Honestly, I cannot speak to that. I wasn't part of the project back then. I've been working on this project now since March.
Yeah.
So I don't know what those requests.
Yeah, that was just
included.
informational, because it really doesn't matter, because this is where we're at right now. You mentioned soil issues. Where are they? I know that you had the testing done. Where are those soil issues?
So the majority of the soil issues are actually, the most significant soil issues are actually underneath the existing tennis courts.
And what are those soil issues?
So those are some elevated levels of lead in urban fill. So there's an ash layer there that has some elevated levels of lead. Those exceedances will require that material be hauled off-site and disposed of. I think we have done an awful lot of investigation, both on horizontal and lateral extent of that material. But that's going to be the most significant soil issue that we're going to
So there are others besides under the tennis
There are
courts?
smaller petroleum-impacted issues, mainly around the old AK Finney building where the old bus station was. There was quite a
Makes
few
sense.
underground storage tanks removed, but there still might be some impacted soils that we'll have to deal with.
Yeah, so in terms of the total budget, the soil under the tennis courts, do you have an approximation of how much that's going to impact the budget?
That is in the bid documents. I don't have that before me, but that is there's a separate line item for all of those things, and they are specified in the bids that we received, but I don't have that in front of me right now.
Okay. I would be interested.
Sure.
If you would update the board on that. I'd like to know that. And I think the basic question that is on everybody's mind, besides why is this costing so much, when are we going to have a Stevens Field Park? Not to echo the mysterious person who put up the when sign, but when?
So the goal would be if the ARPA funds are approved, that we could issue a contract within the next few weeks. We will then, because M.E. O'Brien, the playground, the building, and those kind of materials are under a state contract, we would contract with them and start eating up that lead time for those materials. So the goal in what was written into the project was that the project would end mid-June of next year, with the hope that it would be open for July 4th in the summertime of next year.
And I have one last question for the town manager and assistant town manager.
Okay.
What does our ARPA budget look like at this point?
Assuming the board will approve this $1 million request, we will have approximately $2.8 million remaining. Now, just keep in mind, we still have unresolved issues over on Water Street with the sewer interceptor project, so we are earmarking that money for a future settlement with the contractor, if necessary.
Are we shaving too close with $1 million off of the ARPA budget?
We don't think so.
You don't
Not-
think so?
Right now, not at this time, no. We actually
Okay.
have a meeting on September 1st with the contractor, Northern Construction, to discuss any cost overruns because of the settlement that had taken place on March 6th.
Okay, so what happens if it's determined that everything that went on with Water Street and what goes on going forward with Water Street is greater than the remaining ARPA funds? What would be the process?
So I can tell you, based upon a submittal that Northern has given us, we have ample ARPA funds remaining to cover those costs. Certainly, we're going to try to negotiate a compromise, so it should be hopefully 50% of what they've submitted. So that'll take care of the first phase of the project up to June 30th. And then we'll move forward with the remaining phase of the project, assuming that there's no future settlement during that construction phase. We believe there's ample amount of funds available in the original appropriation from the county to cover those costs. If we have another significant settlement like we had on March 6th, and then we had to settle again with Northern, we would have to go to town meeting for an appropriation at that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Seeing none. Derek, do we expect that we would need the entire remaining almost 2.9 million for that purpose? Or do we expect that we would still have some left for other purposes?
I can tell you that Northern has submitted an estimate of $2.5 million. They want to settle that agreement. That's why I'm thinking we could split it down the middle and compromise at 50%. But again, that's yet to be determined. We're meeting with them on September 1st.
Okay. And David, when would you know, would you not know until the end of the project whether you needed the entire million that you're asking for here? Or would you know before then that you don't need some of the contingent ARPA funds?
So getting the contract going with M.E. O'Brien will, as I mentioned, start eating up some of the lead time for the construction of the the playground equipment. So we'll be prepping that site, doing all the subsurface soil removal, putting in clean fill and putting in the base material for that to be built upon. So we'd probably be doing that later fall, early winter. So we'll probably know somewhere in the January, February timeframe.
That we could
Yeah,
take some of
we'll
the,
have removed all the soil in that area and know quite a bit about whether or not we're going to have other soil issues to deal with, so,
okay. And at that point, you'd feel comfortable telling us you didn't need as much?
correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the request as presented?
I'll make that motion as presented.
Mr. Bletzer has made a motion that we approve the ARPA funds request as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved, it has been seconded. Any discussion from any members of the board as to whether or not we should approve this request for ARPA funds? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote, once again alphabetically through the roll. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Helm.
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Gould.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us into Fall Town Meeting warrant article review. We have a few articles on the agenda for this evening, first of which would be Article 8, an article that would deal with the allocation of funds for a town master plan. And I see a couple of folks approaching. Mr. Bulletin, you care to enlighten us as to this process?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Canty. Members of the Select Board, for the record, I'm Steve Bulletin. I am the Vice Chair of the Planning Board, and I am the Chair of the Master Plan Task Group, its subcommittee. With me tonight, I have fellow Planning Board members, fellow Task Group members, and our Planning and Development Director, Mr. Hartman. There's a renewed issue in Plymouth, planning. Planning is now at the forefront of a lot of people's thoughts, which as a resident and a planning board member is something that's very near and dear to me. The most important document when it comes to planning in Plymouth is our master plan, sort of self-evident. The master plan is the document that contains the goals as defined by the residents for the town and sets forth proposals and ideas for implementation by our elected officials. That's its purpose. That's why the creation of the master plan was identified as a priority, not only by the planning board, but by this board as well. So, why a new master plan? Well, at the direction of the planning board, the master plan task group reviewed our existing master plan and conducted a gap analysis. What we found was that our existing master plan is based on data that's over 20 years old. When it was prepared, the population, demographics, and scope of development of the town were significantly different. Ultimately, the document that was created, this document called Growing Smarter in Plymouth's Fifth Century, was found to be lacking in certain ways. It was missing sections required by state law. It was internally inconsistent in violation of state law, and it failed to have an implementation program, also required by state law. As a result of some of these shortcomings, it became an aspirational document rather than the roadmap that it was intended to be. So the Master Plan Task Group created a scope of work for a new master plan, voted for by the Planning Board, which is intended to remedy these problems. The proposed scope of work was created by the task group with the help of our planning director, an outside consultant from the Old Colony Planning Council, Ms. Joanne Zygmunt, and help from outside consultants who gave us some advice and guidance. It was a collaborative effort. The task group went through the proposed scope of work line by line together, each putting in thoughts, ideas, suggestions, alternate language, everything that we could to try and truly create a scope of work that defined what Plymouth is and what we want our master plan to be. In the end, we came up with a scope that emphasized two particular issues. The first, the public participation. Second, the implementation. We've proposed calling our next master plan Charting Our Future Together, a suggestion by one of our planning board members, Mr. Peck, because at its heart, it is our community's vision for the future of Plymouth. And the new master plan needs to be truly representative of the community's goals. The only way for that to happen is through a robust public participation process. That's why the public outreach section of the proposed scope of work includes townwide surveys, public forums, area and issue-specific focus groups, online public engagement, social media and website, and creative methodologies such as scenario planning in order to truly understand what the public wants to see in Plymouth in our next decade. Then, to be useful to the town, the plan also has to provide guidance as to how to achieve those goals. The implementation plan proposed by the scope of work specifies that the final product has to provide a cohesive means of achieving those goals set forth by the residents, as well as a way to measure progress as the plan is being implemented, neither of which, again, are in our existing master plan. So, we're proposing, in essence, a giant study of the entire town covering almost every aspect of life in Plymouth. A daunting task, to put it mildly. For this, we are seeking the sum of $430,000 in funding through town meeting. The town has separately been awarding a matching grant from the state of $70,000. So, total of $500,000 for the plan. Why that amount? Budget was prepared again with guidance from professionals from Old Colony Planning and independent consultants, people who will not be bidding, but who do this kind of work, as well as through the assistance of Mr. Hartman, who, before joining Plymouth, used to work for consulting firms doing exactly that, preparing town master plans. The amount that we are looking for is based on the cost of master plans in other communities, factoring the size and complexity of Plymouth, and our intention to create more than just an aspirational document. It is a minimum number that will elicit proposals from those who have the experience and skills capable of doing the work and the resources necessary to effectively and efficiently achieve the final product that we require. Ultimately, if this proposed scope of work goes forward, we anticipate that the town will receive proposals not from just individual consultants, but from teams of consultants, probably lead consultants, hiring additional experts, people who are capable of handling not just the 9 areas mandated by the state, but the additional areas that we feel are necessary for Plymouth to truly function in its future. Areas such as our sustainability, our water use, and our critical aspects of infrastructure, all based upon our growing and not growing economy areas. Again, a very complicated area, one that we have been dealing with piecemeal for many years. This is an effort to try and make that a cohesive approach. Given the size and complexity of Plymouth, the range of topics, and the experts that are necessary, we see this as being an absolute necessity to achieve the goals of Plymouth, creating a truly workable master plan. I wholly encourage the Select Board to support this effort, and myself and my fellow members are here to answer any and all questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Mr. Helm?
Thank you for the presentation. A couple questions. You gave a litany of state mandates that were not complied with in the last master plan. How does that happen? Why did that happen? What is going to prevent that from happening again?
I am going to defer to Mr. Hartman, who was here for that, or part of that, the end of that.
So before I came on as planning director, the town, through a master plan task force, had decided to hire a single planner to update and do our new master plan. So when I came on board, that process was well underway. And we quickly realized that that planner, we were paying that person a weekly stipend every week, did it for a number of years. We had paid that person well over $160,000. And as I was trying to look at the goals, the requirements, the tasks that were achieved, they really weren't being done properly. So we realized that having that one single person was not the way to go. We severed ties with that one planner and then went on to hire Goody Clancy with the remaining money, which was about $80,000. And so the problem was that we did the best we could with the remaining money we had. And I think I'm pretty proud of what we were able to do. But again, it was the process that was put in place before I came on. And once I was here, it was pretty obvious it was not working.
So a question for you, Mr. Hartman. These are state mandates. How did we
So although
get
they're
away with
mandates, there's
not complying
nothing.
to them, with
The-
them?
So the state law tells you what your master plan should say, but there's no enforcement mechanism. So, for example, if we never ever had a master plan, there's no penalty. So if we miss certain pieces, there's no penalty for it. But the state says, here are the sections that you should have in your master plan. But there's no penalty if you don't.
So, sorry to keep asking questions.
That's okay.
Now, you may not quite like the way I'm going to phrase this question, and please don't take it personally. Do you feel that the lack of quality of that master plan, the best effort, I mean that, but $80,000 for a master plan, seemed pretty low, and one person doing it. Do you feel that's the reason that, for lack of a better phrase, and this may not be accurate, it was basically put on a shelf and nobody ever really looked at it? I'm
Yeah.
not saying planning department
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
but at large and other departments and committees.
Right, and I think when I was involved at the end, when we hired Goody Clancy, it would have been nice to have a lot more public engagement. Because again, as Steve pointed out, I think the most important thing is you have some specific ideas, I have specific ideas, the board does too, but this really should come from the community. Are the assumptions we made in 1980, because a lot of what we do from planning was set in 1980, and then reinforced in 2004, are those still valid? Are there things we should be doing differently? But that shouldn't come from us, that should come from the community. And I think the biggest shortcoming of that original plan is I don't think there was that kind of public participation.
One more, and this could be for either you or Mr. Bulletin. What are you going to do once we have this master plan to make sure that it actually is a document that is used and paid attention to and guides all of the committees and the boards of the town of Plymouth and the administration?
So-
How are you going to ensure that?
So the implementation section is the important piece, and we'll have recommendation by recommendation that these things should happen. Here are the responsible parties, and here are the timelines. So again, trying to make sure those things happen is something that we'll have to do, but having those things that say very specifically, here are the actions the town must take, here's the person or the group that must take it, and here's how we should proceed. And maybe even, here's some of the costs associated with those. I think that's a very important part, and then that would be the piece that I think would accomplish what your concern is.
One more, sorry, Charlie, just one more.
It's okay.
Given what you just said, is there going to be follow-up? Is
Oh,
there
yes.
going to be somebody who's going to be taking that document and going through it time after time, year after year, and not forcing compliance,
Yeah.
but creating compliance?
I could see a recommendation coming out of it for staff that might do that. I could also see a master plan implementation committee. Many towns have that, where once this is done, you have a committee of people who are responsible to be hammering on you and me and Derek and the planning board to say, hey, we're this committee, here's our master plan, here's what you said you're going to do, you must do it. And so I think that committee involvement would be a good one, too.
Thank you.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes, I just want to finish a final add to Mr. Helm's question. In addition to the implementation section, we have specifically asked that the consultant, as part of the scope of the work, create a measurement section so that not only can you say, this is what's supposed to be done, this is who's supposed to be doing it, but also how do we track how we're doing? Whether that's what do we plan on doing for open space, for recreational, our economy and our tax base, our transportation, how many miles of additional public transportation have we created, how many additional affordable housing units have we created. Whatever that is, we have trackable measures that are in place that can be published regularly so that the residents can see from a report, just the way the select board presents where it stands on a lot of its goals, the town will be able to see where the town stands on the town's goals. And they will be able to hold our representatives accountable by saying, here's our master plan. We are under on this area. We're under on this area. What do you plan on doing about it? So it's a public accountability as well as a internal accountability.
All right, thank you. Mr. Blitzer.
I have a question for Mr. Hartman. So I agree 100%. We need community input. I mean, and I'm assuming that's why it's expensive. The expense of, trying to cover 106 square miles with 18 precincts, with active developments, very active developments. A lot of new folks are moving into Plymouth, and they're very active in our politics and what's going on in town, and they're going to want to have a say. I see some people in the room right now that are here just for that reason, and I appreciate it. It's a lot of knowledge that have come to the town, so they're going to have to spend a lot of time talking to a lot of different people from North Plymouth all the way down to Red Brook and farther, about what they see as the vision for Plymouth.
And that is
So-
the most expensive part of the plan.
So that's how I can have, $500,000 for a study or a plan. It seems like a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, it's probably not, because what it will do, for the vision of this town, and hopefully some of the mistakes we've made, we can correct and not have some of them in the future. And it'd be helpful for the planning board, for the select board, for, all the different boards to, go through their processes. But, so that's why. And how long will this take? A couple of years?
At least, yeah,
Take a couple
I
of
would
years.
say the public process, the first part is going to be close to a year on its own, and then at least probably a 2-year process.
How long before we can start implementing some of,
Well-
can it be done while the study's still going on or not?
Some things typically will
Because there's a
happen.
lot going on, I'm
Yeah,
just
but
saying.
for the most part, what you want to do is have the plan prepared, present it to the planning board, have them adopt it, select board adopt it, and then ask for town meeting to actually not adopt it, but endorse it. And so then hopefully, you want to wait to the end so that you have a lot of community buy-in, so that when you come back to say, all right, here are the things we need to do, and you can remind everybody that you did see this as we went through the process. So there are maybe some things that can jump out first, but most of it will probably come at the
Yeah,
end.
because I've been on the board 2 years, and all I've heard about is, we need a master plan, we need a master plan. And then we have a master plan, but we don't have a master plan, so let's get this thing going. And,
I just point out, we've talked to several companies that do this for a living. It seems like the going rate in Plymouth, in Massachusetts, is about $400,000 for a master plan, and we're 4 times the size of any other town. So we're a little more unique. We want we want a
We are
slightly
unique.
different and better process.
No question.
But again, this is not that unusual compared to what other communities are
and
looking at.
unique, we are probably one of the most unique towns in Plymouth, there's no question about
In
that.
Massachusetts, you said it too.
In Massachusetts, yeah, that's because of you, because
I started it.
I listened to you. But the last thing, how are we going to pay for this?
So this would come out of free cash.
Okay.
I talked to Lynn Barrett. She doesn't really want to say it, but free cash this year looks like it's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of, okay. It comes out of free cash.
500,000, beautiful.
She comes out of free cash, and she's very comfortable saying that this appropriation is within the policies of how we spend free cash.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That is both comforting and ambiguous. All right. Any other questions? Mr. Peck, is something you'd like to add?
Yeah, just as, I wanted to compliment some of the comments you've already had with just a couple observations. The first is, town meeting passed the 167,000 planning study just for traffic in a certain zone. We're asking for essentially 3 times that, less the grant, to do the whole town and do far more than just transportation. The other point I want to make, actually, a second point, I went online, this is, as the others have said, a team effort. You need 3 or 4 consulting teams with specialized expertise to focus on things. So I looked at Braintree, Barnstable, Portsmouth, Brockton, for their recent master plans, and every single one had 3 or 4 consultant teams and up to 9 different individuals from the consultant teams working on it. This is not a project for 1 person or 2 persons. It's for a team. And the third thing is Holtec land. As I understand it, they plan to decommission it by 2031, is what we've heard, at which point the land, and possibly at earlier dates, at piecemeal, the land is released for other uses. So 2031 isn't that far away. If this master plan takes 2 years or a little bit more, and we get going in early '24, it's done in '26, and among the implementation plans for that, or the timelines, is probably rezoning and planning ahead. 2031 isn't that far away. This, that's the elephant in the room. We've got all that land there, whether it's open space, a mix of, industrial or expansion. There's a lot to think about just there. So putting together a good team with multiple expertise is really important, and the time is right. So I very much support this.
Mr. Blitzer?
David, you reminded me too, with that traffic study, that we now have precincts that are sponsoring studies, and we have 18 precincts, so that's going to tell you that a lot of people are going to want to have some say, and they're going to want to be heard, so.
But it tells me there's a real appetite for planning. I mean, we're certainly pushing it, but the town wants it, at individual
Absolutely.
precinct levels, and town meeting is supporting it. So we hope you support, and we hope town meeting supports this.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Any other questions from any other members of the board? All right. Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to approve the inclusion of Article 8 on the warrant for this upcoming annual town meeting?
I'll motion for the inclusion of Article 8.
All right, Mr. Helm has moved. Mr. Blitzer?
I'll second that.
Mr. Blitzer has seconded. Any discussion in regards to whether or not we should approve the inclusion of Article 8 on the town meeting warrant? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote. Once again, through the roll, Mr. Blitzer.
Yes.
And Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And myself, yes, it is unanimous. Thank you to the presenters. All right, that brings us into the next item on our agenda, that being proposed Fall Town Meeting Article 10 in relation to a land donation, and we are joined by the Fire Chief, Neil Foley.
Good evening, thank you. Neil Foley, Chief of the Fire Department. This is a great segue, because this is about planning for the future of the fire department as well. So we were here with Dan Gorsica from AD Makepeace back in February, where he made a pledge of a donation of a plot of land on Bourne Road. This came about in 2020, Springtown meeting. I believe it was Article 5 and 6, was to plan and to constructions, renovations, and other planning purposes for Stations 2, 5, and 4. Station 4 is the Bourne Road Fire Station. What we've got at this point is that the architect has worked out some plans as far as what they could do for renovation for Station 4, and it was really found that it's not feasible to do a renovation there due to the lot size and the configuration of the lot itself, the building. And we took that information back and we actually presented it to the building committee. And in 2021, the building committee voted that we should be looking for a different site to construct a new Bourne Road Fire Station in the future. We decided to reach out and engage in some of the landowners in the area of Bourne Road. And we did successfully negotiate a donation from 80 Makepeace. Approximately, what you see in front of you is an approximate size of about 2.33 acres of land in the area of 220 Bourne Road, south of the South Elementary School, north of the 80 Makepeace development. Recent studies of response times and response volume indicates that that would be an excellent location for a new fire station on Bourne Road. Additionally, the layout and the location allows for increased line of sight on the roadway. Currently, where Station 4 is, if anybody has come down on Bourne Road heading from the north, heading south, or actually even heading from south in either direction, the fire station pretty much pops right up upon you. So you can imagine when a fire engine is leaving, that apparatus is leaving to go to an emergency, there's a lot of times that we're coming out to the roadway surprising motorists, and thankfully we haven't had any catastrophes at this point. But the location that we're looking to acquire is going to be a much better location and line of sight, and will be safer for the motorists in the area. Additionally, there is the possibility that we may be able to tap into public water supply in that area. This station will exceed the minimum requirements needed for even a fire sprinkler suppression system. So having access to public water is going to make that so much more easier and cost-effective when it comes to not having to purchase and maintain pumps for that purpose. So there's a lot of pluses that go along with this, including increasing the working conditions of the firefighters that work there. We'll be able to store additional apparatus there. We would negotiate with our private ambulance company to likely staff additional resources in that area to respond to emergencies. So this land donation, the acceptance of it, is going to position the fire department to continue to have a robust response to that area as it continues to grow as one of the largest areas of the town of Plymouth as far as growth. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief Foley. Any questions from any members of the board?
No, I have a statement that I toured that building when I was running, and it's awful, and this is a long time coming, and I'm glad that we got the land donated. I mean, that area has just grown. I mean, it just keeps growing and growing, and you know, the needs down there. You know, you need brush trucks, pump trucks. You know, you're going to need probably ladders down there. I mean, there's a lot more equipment you need now than you needed before.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me ask you a question. Are we going to have any problems like we had on Sandwich Road with people complaining about, you know, the neighborhood and all that?
I don't believe so. I think that Bourne Road is a pretty well-traveled road in contrast to the other property. I think that it's going to be a welcome addition to the area, especially the neighbors surrounding that area. It's a very large response area for the fire department. It's over 14 square miles, which is larger than a lot of towns in the area. So it's always a challenge, but being able to house additional apparatus so that we could run multiple calls at once in that area will be important.
Well, the sight lines are big. That's a real safety issue. So, and it's nice having a fire station in your backyard, because I have one right near me, and I feel very safe.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the inclusion of Article 10 on the fall town meeting warrant?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bletzer has moved.
I will second.
Mr. Helm has seconded. Any discussion about whether or not we should include Article 10 on the fall town meeting warrant? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And myself, yes. It is unanimous. Thank you, Chief Foley. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. We are going to move temporarily past what is next listed on our agenda as Article 11. The presenter is not with us yet, but will be joining us in the near future. We will take that up upon his arrival. At this time, that brings us to Article 13.
Hi, I'm Stephanie from the Open Space Committee. I just want to say I'm not asking for money, so that's a good thing. The Open Space Committee has reviewed over a dozen tax title properties. We've gone out onto site visits, and the ones I'm about to present to you have the most benefit for the town as open space.
Excuse me, can you speak into the microphone? Bring the
Sorry.
microphone. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little shorter than everyone else. So this first one is in Billington C, the Morton Park area, and we're asking this be transferred to the Parks and Forestry Department. You really can't see. Oh, so there are smaller lots, and the benefit to the town would be it's contributed to the, recreational use. And if you notice, there's one that's just an island. And I know there's like kayakers that go out to the island quite a bit. And hoping, yeah. Passive recreation, strategic wildlife habitat, and the aquifer protection, which I know is really big for the town right now. It's, so that, it again is transferred to the Parks and Forestry Department for inclusion to keep Morton Park in the forestry. And I'm going to. Yes, please. Oh, sorry. Are we going to vote on this?
We're going to, yeah, we'll handle each one
Okay.
separately.
Sorry about that.
Any questions from any members of the board in relation to Article 13? Seeing none, I have, Steph, are these lots buildable lots, or any of them not buildable lots?
So if you look at the 2.9 acres, it's, if on your map, it's near deep water. So that is a no. The 0.2 acres, you couldn't get a house on that.
The, which one?
It's 0.2, 0.113, I'm sorry. That's a typo
Okay.
on my, so that 0.13 is near the road, but there's no, you couldn't get a house on 0.3 acres. The 2.26, again, that's all waterfront. So I would not think that someone would want to develop it because you would then limit access to Billington C. You know, that's a really big recreational spot for the town. And developing that area would just cut access to the townspeople. And then the 2.9 is literally that, you know, that little island in the middle of Billington Sea, and then they have that kayaking business down there, so it's generating revenue and taxes for the town, so I can't see letting that be buildable, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Mr. Farah, did you have something to add?
Good evening, everybody. Patrick Farah, planning staff. So essentially, this is a housekeeping measure. These 4 parcels are within Morton Park, and speaking with the acting DPW director, as well as the Parks and Forestry Superintendent, Nick Fiala, they were under the assumption that these 4 parcels were essentially part of Morton Park and used as such, part of the park. So when these four were discovered by the Open Space Committee, the natural progression was, let's go to town meeting and see if town meeting would vote to actually place that under the Parks and Forestry Department, so it'll be part of the contiguous area.
So,
Okay, Mr. Bletzer?
so basically, we're using the land now.
Correct.
So let's just make this legal, is that what we're
Right,
doing?
it is being
Okay.
used as the park,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I get you. Now, does any cost to the town to do this process, or is this?
I mean, the only cost would be recording fees. Once town meeting votes, hopefully in favor of it, town council will draft an affidavit, 4 affidavits for the 4 properties, and it would just get recorded through the registry.
And what is the approximate cost of a recording fee at this time?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer.
Maybe we get Mr. Cirque to do it for pro bono. He's got time.
I've been away from this for a while, so I don't want to answer that question.
All right.
It's between $1 and $3.
It's not much.
I mean, $100 and $300.
It's not much.
$100 and $300, okay. I like the 1 to 3 better, Mr. Cirque, but that's, all right. Okay, any other questions, Mr. Helm?
What do you know of the plans of the Parks Department for any possible increased usage? I know I'm very familiar with the area. I, in the past, kayaked from across from the island out to the island and would spend an afternoon on the island. Are there plans to make it more accessible, more noticeable, or leave it the way that it is?
These are also great questions. Since I'm not in the Parks Department, I really can't answer that. Sorry. But I can find out.
Well, I would just suggest possibly at town meeting, because I am going to vote to move this forward to town meeting. If you could prep for those questions, particularly given its vicinity to Morton Park and the issues that we have in Morton Park. Are we potentially creating a larger scale Morton Park? And if we are potentially doing it, it doesn't mean we don't have to, but what preparations are going to be made for that? Because there is beach area there, and there is parking area there, and it's just that no one's really discovered it yet. And that's why I asked the question about improving access and all of that.
Mr. Bletzer?
But just to be clear, these parcels, we're already using them. They're already being used as in Morton Park, so,
The information I received from the Parks Department
Yeah.
was essentially, oh, we thought this was already part of
okay.
the park.
So we're just, as you said, it's just a house cleaning.
This is a housekeeping
I get you.
measure, correct,
I get it.
essentially. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Do I have a motion? Sorry to interrupt, but do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
To include Article 13
Yes.
on the town meeting warrant. Mr. Bletzer has moved. Mr. Helm, did you care to second?
Second.
Mr. Helm has seconded. Any discussion about whether or not we should include Article 13 on the fall town meeting warrant? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote. Once again, through the roll, Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. Thank you both. All right, that brings us to the next article, that being Article 14.
That's me too. Sorry. So this Open Space Committee again, and this is a tract of land off of Valley Road. It's a classic Pine Barrens. Let me see. That's kind of hard to see. It's a large tract of existing Conservation Commission land, and it borders the 1,000 acres of the already, sorry. There's 196 acres in addition that this would add on to that. It's a key Pine Barrens habitat known as the 1,000 acres. It's more like 500 acres, though, in reality. It provides a crucial neighborhood access. It is in harmony with the town's master plan, and is high potential for passive recreation, and it does have threatened wildlife habitat on there. Let's see if is that it? Okay, that's it on that property. On yours, is that a little more clearer? Because I have,
We have printouts of the,
yeah, that is a little
in our packet.
far away. Patrick, do you have anything else you want to add on this one?
So is there another,
Yeah, it's kind of far away.
We have a picture of that.
so this piece of property was actually foreclosed back in 1941, so it's been sitting around for quite a while. It's all within natural heritage, as well as the Area 3, which is the contributing areas to recreational water bodies of the Aquifer Protection District. So, and it abuts over 150 acres of protected open space, including the Elbow Pond Conservation Area, which you see, I can show you this. Oh, it doesn't seem to be working, but it's the large parcel that kind of surrounds it to the west. So that's the first property, and that's off Valley Road. And yeah, so the next one's the shallow pond.
So we lumped two onto this article. So the shallow pond is a very small lot, but if you see the top point on the shallow pond, it would be a great connector to the Indian Pond, to access the Briggs property, which is the Manamet Recreation Area, Briggs Estate, and the Hillside Estates open space. So that's pretty crucial to get some access area for that development there, so that they have the ability to utilize the recreation, the trails. And it doesn't have a ton of frontage, so I'm not, yeah, it doesn't have a ton of frontage on the shallow pond, so I'm not feeling that it's not that buildable of a lot, but Patrick, if you want to fill them in.
So if I can continue. Basically, this, it's 1.43 acres right off of Shallow Pond. It abuts the Briggs property, which was part of the challenge grant for over 70 acres several years ago with our predecessing planner, Valerie Massard. She worked on that extensively. What is very interesting about this is that this would become part of the greater Beaver Dam Conservation Area. So there would be links, trail links to Beaver Dam Conservation Area, the Briggs property, Indian Brook Conservation Area, Little Island Pond Conservation Area, as well as the Talcott Estate. And that would consist over 1,055 acres of open space. Where this comes into play is this would give some public access, potentially for parking, 1 or 2 spots, as well as pedestrian access for the local neighborhood to create a trail. We would create a trailhead at some point and actually go through that property into the Briggs estate property.
Okay,
And that's why we're looking for your support. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Blitzer, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
so where is this in the process? Would this foreclosed on? Is this a
Oh, yeah, this is also, this was foreclosed back in November 6, 2003,
okay, all right.
so almost 20 years ago.
So it's not going to cost us to acquire this? Not going to be a fight over this?
Again, this would be only incur recording costs.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Any other questions from any other members of the board? If no one else does, are these buildable lots?
So the ongoing practice that the town of Plymouth has is that tax title properties, if they were to go to auction, they would have a deed restriction that they cannot be built on. A primary structure cannot be built on it. And that's why when the Open Space Committee looks at different parcels, since there is no budget for the Open Space Committee, they look at tax title properties. As everyone knows, or most everyone knows, we have many tax title properties throughout the town. So there is a sort of ranking criteria that the Open Space Committee looks at whether it's within natural heritage, if there's wetlands nearby, if it's contiguous with existing open space, and it makes these determinations. And what's really interesting about Article 13 and Article 14 is that the Open Space Committee looks at, obviously, their charge and mission is to protect open space wherever possible, but it doesn't always necessarily go to conservation. In years past, we went, or the Open Space Committee transferred or conveyed a bunch of land to the water commissioners for future wells. Article 13 for this upcoming town meeting would go to the Parks Department. So it's not just for under Article 97 conservation, it would be, they look at all different aspects.
Okay, so I accept your explanation about the policy regarding tax titles being unbuildable with a deed restriction, but that policy could be altered. Absent that policy, are there any other reasons that these particular lots would be unbuildable?
Well, again, you'd have to look at frontage, you'd have to see whether, again, with aquifer protection, natural heritage, it all poses some sort of conditions. I'm not going to say you can't, I'm not going to say you can.
Okay.
It depends.
It depends. That's a very
And that's an
lawyerly-
attorney's term, and
It is, yes. Okay.
I know I play one on TV sometimes.
All right. Thank you. Is there, I guess in regards to the location off Valley Road, that has been in tax title status since before the United States was involved in the Second World War. Is there any pressing need for that to change into another form? I mean, it's functionally in conservation status right now and has been for almost 82 years. It's a sizable parcel, over 10 acres, so I guess, you know, the 1.43 I'm not so concerned about, but a larger parcel that's sitting there that is functionally conserved, but we might want to do something with in the future, that seems to me a bit of a different story. Do you have anything you could add as to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It provides excellent public access to over 150 acres of protected open space. And again, natural heritage runs through it, as well as Aquifer Protection Area 3. And again, the town's having more and more awareness and conversation about protecting our aquifer. And that's not just our drinking water, but also our recreational bodies of water, all our ponds, streams, rivers, which eventually lead into the harbor and the bay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any other members of the board? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion in regards to Article 14?
I motion that we move this forward to town meeting.
All right, Mr. Helm has made a motion that we approve the inclusion of Article 14 on the fall town meeting warrant.
I will second that.
Mr. Bletzer has seconded. Any discussion from any members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for the vote. Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us into... He is? I see that Mark Reel has joined us, our presenter for Article 11, which we passed, but I will now take up if Mr. Reel is ready to present in regards to Article 11.
Absolutely. Sorry for that delay.
No
I
problem.
was working with the CANS Committee on Climate Action Plan stuff. So, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Mark Reel. I'm the Climate Resiliency and Sustainability Planner for the town of Plymouth here. So Article 11 is looking to create an EV charging revolving fund. Since 2014, the energy officer in the town of Plymouth, Patrick Farah, have been working hard to increase the amount of electric vehicle charging stations across the community. And most recently, we've added 4 additional charging ports here at the Cornish lot. So there are 6 ports here now. And in addition to that, we've begun to charge for the use of those charging stations. So in years past, it's been free of charge, and now we are charging for the electricity plus a 20% premium on that. And so that will cover the cost of the electricity in addition to software subscription services for monitoring those units, as well as future maintenance and hopefully future expansion of the system. We've seen an exponential growth of use in the last year or two, really. It's been really quite remarkable how much we've seen the use grow. And so we recognize the need to begin to make sure that the funding is available to support that. So we are looking for your support in creating this fund. The cap would be at $200,000 proposed so that we could potentially replace all of the units if they needed to be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reel. Any questions from any members of the board? If no one else does, I noticed the recommended threshold for this revolving account is $200,000. This amount would be the estimated cost of replacing double the existing network hardware. So does that, am I reading that correctly, that that would be to replace the entire existing network twice over?
What did we, yeah, that's what we did.
Correct, but our goal is to expand, so if we did it all at once, it would just be done once, but the way you interpreted it was correct. You could do it twice over right now, but if we're gonna add on as we go, we're thinking capacity will be, if we do a replacement for everything, it'll be the 200,000.
So we want to essentially double the size of the existing network and then have the money to replace it. Okay, because as it was written, that seemed like a particularly generous contingency, but with that in mind, I understand. Okay, any other questions?
A question, Mark.
Mr. Bledsoe.
So we want to add these stations. Are we looking for some grant money because there's got to be, Patrick, I know you've done that, to get some, I know the PGDC was working on getting some at one point to get more of those stations in.
Yes, yes, we've leveraged grant funding for the additional units that we've put in place, and we anticipate utilizing grant funds moving forward as well, because we don't want to just use the revolving account funds. We want to supplement those funds with grant funds.
No, the reason why I'm asking that, because I would like to not use the revolving funds. If we can get grant money to get all the new equipment,
Right.
at least that would save us from having to keep funding that.
Exactly. So right now, we're able to access EVIP funds to cover the cost of the hardware.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges with the EVIP funds, though, are locations we've looked at adding units in. When we use EVIP funding, we are required to essentially take one space away for accessibility. And so that's location-wise, it can be a challenge when we have those requirements. But generally, we're looking to be able to use those funds to purchase the hardware.
And now that you're charging, it's very helpful in moving the cars too, because they're not staying in those spots.
Right, exactly.
Because it's cost a lot, I think, if once you're charged.
Yes.
Because I
yes.
heard a tourist that said, I gotta go move my car, and I said, no, there's no enforcement. He goes, no, I'm at the EV station, it's
Yeah.
$10 an hour or something. I said, you better move it. So good job. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from any members of the board? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the inclusion of Article 11 on the fall town meeting warrant?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Mr. Bledsoe has moved.
I'll second.
Mr. Helm has seconded. Any discussion about whether or not we should include Article 11 on the fall town meeting warrant? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote once again through the roll. Mr. Bledsoe, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Reel. All right, so that brings us into Article 15, proposed bylaw amendment relating to miniature single-use alcohol containers, colloquially known as NIPS. I believe we are joined by Mr. Ken Stone.
I am not Ken Stone.
I've noticed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Deb Ivanto, and I'm a member of the Open Space Committee. Thank you so much for giving us all this airtime tonight. And I think we've been very busy working on bringing articles. Can you turn the microphone on? Oh, sorry. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So again, thank you. So in addition to the tax title properties that Steph and Patrick just discussed, the Open Space Committee is also sponsoring Article 15, which is a proposal to ban the miniature single-use alcohol containers, AKA NIPS, in the town of Plymouth. So tonight, we'd like to give you an overview of the proposal, answer any questions that you might have, and hopefully gain your support to move this article forward. Ken Stone is our resident expert, and as you'll hear in a minute, there are many, many reasons that a NIP ban makes sense for our community. But given the mission of the Open Space Committee, the one that excites us the most is the environmental benefits, the environmental gains that our community would realize by eliminating NIPS from the waste stream. So I am going to turn it over to Ken. I'm going to let him elaborate, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much again for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See if I can get this going. Okay, so as people perhaps know, what the ban would eliminate would be any nip, any bottle, 100 milliliters or smaller. And I'm going to skip a couple of slides just to try to speed things up a bit. The primary motivation for this is that NIPS are a major source of litter in Plymouth, if not the major source, especially since we've got rid of the plastic bags. Plymouth volunteers picked up over 14,000 NIPS in just 4 days of cleanups, and that's despite the fact that for over a decade, we've been doing cleanups in town twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. So you can begin to imagine how many could have been collected if this was our first cleanup, if we weren't already attending to these areas, or if volunteers spent more time doing so. But 14,000 in 4 days is pretty astounding. I'm going to, whoops, wrong direction. Here we go. I'm going to skip that one for now. So what are some of the reasons and the problems with NIPS? One thing is that NIPS cannot and never will be recycled, no matter how big a deposit anyone may put on them. NIPS are too small and too light, no matter what material they're made out of, glass or plastic, to be of value to recyclers. There's no market for them. There's no monetary value. So when the MRFs get hold of litter, their machines are designed to drop out, not capture anything that small, and they will always end up just simply adding to our solid waste stream if they don't end up in the environment. Oops, no, stay there for a moment. Another thing that people talk about is that we should wait until the state passes a deposit on NIPS. The reality is that some version of an expanded or updated bottle bill, including NIP deposits or bans, have been filed every single legislative session for over 23 years, every single session since before the year 2000. What happens is that they always get buried in committee. They're never allowed to come to a vote for the floor. That's what's happening with the current bills before our legislature. That's what's happened every year in the past. There is not enthusiasm on the Hill because of the influence of special interests. It's kind of ironic. The alcohol industry has long argued that deposits lead to higher costs, which would be passed on as higher retail prices to consumers, which would result in lower sales. They've only been changing that tune recently as more and more bans on NIPS have been occurring. NIPS are also a drain on DPW's resources, collection, disposal, and they block drains in towns. Nips are primarily made out of plastic. There are some glass, but everything we're collecting, the vast majority is plastic. Nips do not degrade. They break into smaller and smaller plastics, microplastics. They get into the environment. They're working their way up the food chain. They're toxic in terms of what they leach, including benzyne, which is a known carcinogen. And we're now finding microparticles in human blood, lungs, stool, the placentas of women who have given birth. And just last month, there was an article in Lancet that they're finding microplastics in the hearts of cardiac patients. So not a good thing. Nip bans have proven very effective. Before Falmouth passed its nip ban, they did some research. They actually went through all their trash. I had a little trouble finding volunteers who were willing to do that here, but they did that in Falmouth. They found that 32% of all litter items collected were nips. After the and they said it was the primary, the biggest single item within the litter stream. After the bylaw was introduced, only 6% of litter were miniatures. And that kind of results have been found in all the towns that have passed them so far. And if you look at that partial list, you'll notice that most of them are pretty much our neighbors that are passing these things. Our own town administrators have recognized the significance of NIPS as a problem in the town. If you remember, I think it may have been about 3 years ago, Melissa Origi, our past town manager, brought a NIP ban before this panel. And in May, during a discussion about the upcoming cleanups, our current town manager, Mr. Brindisi, mentioned that during the Seaside Trail cleanup, the DPW filled up multiple trash bags with just nips alone, and he went on to state that clearly there is a problem in the community. And with the data I've shown, I hope you recognize that as well. I'm going to skip this one for now. Just to preface this, I'm a retired psychologist. I have a postdoctoral certificate in alcoholism diagnosis and treatment, and I've published in the field. But I don't think you need to have those kind of credentials to recognize that NIPS encourage alcohol abusive behaviors. We all know about the drinking and driving issues. There have been problems in restaurants with people over drinking, bringing NIPS in. But what is interesting is that NIPS are a proven harm reduction strategy. In health policy, a harm reduction strategy is taken when you recognize that there's a problem that we can't eliminate, like addictions, but we can introduce strategies that very much mitigate the impact. And the results of what happened in Chelsea, who was the first town to pass a ban in mid-2018, 5 years ago, are remarkable. 742 alcohol-related ambulance and fire responses in 2017, down to 127 a year after the ban was introduced. That's from an average of 62 alcohol calls a month in 17 to about 16 a month by the summer of 2019. Also in 19, 86 individuals taken into custody, down from 222 the year before, a 66% drop in alcohol-related detentions. And other towns are finding the same thing. In Wareham, select person Bruce noted similar results, stating that, and I'm quoting, in addition to helping cut down on trash, Wareham's ban has also cut public drinking and related police calls. The mayor of Bedford just asked his licensing board to pass a NIP ban. They did, and he said that the police department there had also expressed concern about the association between NIP consumption and public drunkenness. So I'm going to probably skip this one too. Some people talk about bigger bottles. If people are forced into the half pints, they will be more alcoholism. Actually, the studies show just the opposite. And I can get into those if people have more questions about that. I did want to spend some time talking about the fact that NIPS will not be a disaster to the liquor stores. Since 2018, the Boston Licensing Board requires that applicants for a new package store license must agree to a condition of not selling singles or miniature bottles. And since that was implemented, 57 people and groups have applied for licenses, fully understanding that if they open a store, they will not be able to sell nips. Clearly, a lot of people still think it's worth having a liquor store if you can't sell nips, or you wouldn't have that many people chasing licenses. And Boston City's council experience with all this has led them to this year consider expanding the ban citywide. It's already banned in the seafront area. Also, I spoke with a gentleman who was on the licensing board in Chelsea, and also one of their city councilors, Roy Alvalenda. He noted that a liquor store in 21 sold for more than the average price of a liquor license in Boston, and that was for the sale of just the liquor license. It didn't include the inventory, the shelving, cooling the building, just the liquor license. And as he stated, business couldn't be that bad if a license in Chelsea is worth that much. Robert Mellon, the executive director of the Massachusetts Packaging Store Association, has acknowledged that no liquor stores, he did this just this year, have closed in Chelsea after 5 years of their ban, and there's no evidence anywhere else to the contrary. Nobody's closing up shop because they're working in a town that has a ban. Also, when Chelsea was contemplating its ban, Mellon estimated that doing so could affect, and I quote, up to 10% of sales in Chelsea. That's important language. Up to means the maximum he expected might be 10%. And it's of sales, not of profits. Sell 3 nips, that's 3 sales. Sell a 6-pack, that's 1. But understandably, I understand nobody likes to risk or see a revenue stream being removed from their business. But as more and more bans get passed, it's curious that liquor store owners seem to keep raising the estimate. It's gone from 10% to 15% to 20%. Somebody said in Chelsea store went 30%. Mr. Alienda said he made some comments and thought that if people want to ask more. And now some people are saying 40%. But those are consensuses. The data is, and the evidence is, I would suggest that no liquor stores are closing. The value of liquor businesses are holding per the evidence in Boston and Chelsea. And clearly a liquor license is still a very desirable and valuable thing to pursue, whether a store can sell nips or not. So in summary, a nip ban will clean up and help maintain the beauty of our town. It'll reduce expenses for our DPW and town safety services. It'll reduce alcohol-related health and safety risks to our residents. And it'll do so without impacting the public's right to consume alcohol. We're banning a container, not alcohol. So open to questions. I skipped a lot just to try to make it short.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Mr. Bletzer, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have actually quite a few. I applaud your efforts. I really do. I think the environment, obviously the last couple of articles I voted for the open space, and I applaud what you folks are doing, trying to keep our town clean. I live on a main street myself, and I would just say that I see nips, but I also see lottery tickets, Dunkin' Donuts cups, Pepsi cans, Bud Light cans, fast food containers. I mean, I'm picking stuff up, not every day, but it's quite often. So there's a couple things I don't think a nip ban is going to do. Number one, I don't think it's going to stop litter in Plymouth. I really don't. It might help it a little bit, but it's not going to stop it. And the argument about drunken driving, I mean, I work for the courts, and let me tell you, somebody that wants to drink and drive is going to drink and drive. If they don't get nips, they're going to have half pints. And what I'm going to find, I'll find plastic half pints in my lawn. That's what I'm going to find, because they're going to drink if they want to drink. I don't think it's going to curb alcoholism. And And I saw a piece about tourism. The tourists love nips. They bring it back to their hotels because they don't want to get a big bottle because they're only staying for a couple of nights, and they have nips. And the hotels tell you this, that they find them in the rooms all the time because the tourists like that. So, you know, I understand what you're trying to do, and this came before us before, and I actually voted for it, and then I thought about it, and I talked to people, and I talked to the industry. In fact, in a minute, I'm going to ask the chairman if I could bring somebody up here that could speak and tell you the other side of the equation. The bottom line is, you mentioned a few things. Boston has not got a nip ban. They haven't done that. They're talking about it.
Talking about it.
Just like the legislator has been talking about it. But the reason why they haven't done it, because they don't, everything you're saying tonight, they don't believe to be true. Completely true. I mean, listen, I'm not going to say that it wouldn't do a little bit of good, but the only thing I can tell you, I'm telling you what I don't think it's going to do, but what I believe, and I'm going to listen to a couple of people in a minute, I believe one thing it will do. We have 14 liquor stores in this town that a lot of them are Plymouth residents that have families in Plymouth. They pay taxes in Plymouth. They have employees in Plymouth that depend on their liquor stores. That's their jobs, and they depend on that. And I believe, because we're not a big city, we're a small town, that people are going to get their nips. They're going to go to North Plymouth. You can past North Plymouth, there's a couple liquor stores like within walking distance. They're going to go there, and they're going to get their nips and come back into town. But they're not going to just go there and get nips. They're going to buy their beer. They're going to buy their wine. They're going to buy, they're going to buy their lottery tickets. They're going to do their business in that store, and they're not going to go to certain stores. I won't mention. There's some folks here tonight. But it's going to hurt our local businesses. Also, they can go to Bourne. We have down in Cedarville and South Plymouth, we get liquor stores. And I'm not in favor of this because I think it's going to hurt our small businesses. The smoking ban, when that came in effect, I don't smoke. I hate smoke. I've been working in the industry for years, all my life, and I had to inhale that smoke. But I hated the ban, because it was going to hurt restaurants and bars in Plymouth. And I said, until they go to a statewide ban to make a level playing field, it's not going to work, and it hurts. Our business, I'm at a local restaurant, and our business was off. It hurt our business big time. They were going to Kingston, they were going to other towns, they were going to private clubs. So I don't want you to think I'm against the environment. I'm proven as a town meeting member, I've always voted for environmental things. But this particular ban, I don't think is going to do the things that you're saying here.
May I respond to something?
No, I'm going to finish in 1 second.
I'm sorry.
So the reason why I'm going to vote is because it's going to hurt local businesses. When the state, I think you folks ought to concentrate on the state delegation and get them to pass a statewide ban that will make it a level playing field for everybody, similar to what they did with the smoking ban. And once that smoking ban went in, that was the greatest thing that ever happened for the restaurants, greatest thing that ever happened. So, but no, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. First off, with regards to it not doing that much for litter and environment.
It's going to help,
Well,
but it's
let
not
me-
going to eliminate litter.
Mr. Blitzer, he
please
didn't
let me
interrupt you, if you could.
Okay, that's all.
That kind of thing was said when we introduced the plastic bag ban as well. In the 6 years that we've had the plastic bag ban, we've diverted, based on industry estimates, 150 million plastic bags from the waste stream. Yeah, there'll still be other forms of litter, but quite frankly, as I mentioned some of the stats, nips are now making up the majority of our litter. So we'll eliminate nips.
And we'll keep working at different things to try to reduce the amount of litter in town, but it will make a significant difference in the amount of litter. And I think the data from Falmouth shows that. With regards to what you said about smoking as an example, I think that's a good example. We banned smoking in restaurants. It may have hurt them for a short time. Restaurants, as you said, are doing great now, whether people smoke or not. In terms of people going to other towns for the nip bans to buy liquor, I imagine some will. But the reality is, if I want a six-pack or my bottle of gin, I'm not driving to Kingston for it. I'm going to buy it here. And again, the evidence in other towns, in Chelsea, et cetera, regarding alcohol, as I said. And again, I'm a professional in the field. I fully understand it's not going to eliminate alcoholism. It is a harm reduction strategy that is an effective one. And Chelsea demonstrates that. Significant reduction in drinking, significant reduction in emergency calls. The same thing is happening in other towns. It'll happen here too. So we're not trying to eliminate alcoholism.
No, I know. Can I respond to you now?
One last thing. In terms of the environment, nips are much more harmful than paper. Paper isn't good, but paper doesn't have toxins. Paper isn't getting into people's bodies. Paper doesn't get washed into the ocean where it binds with other toxins to make a toxic soup. So it's a particularly nasty kind of product in terms of the environment. As I said, many plastics are made with a base of benzyne. It is a known carcinogen. So yes, is it going to eliminate all litter? No. Did it eliminate all the bags and greatly clean up our town? You bet. And will the same thing happen with nips? I believe it will. I'm sorry.
Okay, so just a scenario. So you're a guy that doesn't want to go to Kingston or Bourne, but you're a guy that likes to drink in his car.
That likes to what?
But you're a guy that likes to drink and drive. So instead of getting nips, because he can't get them in Plymouth, he's going to get a half pint.
I can talk about that.
And he's going to drink that half pint,
No,
and
he's
he's going to throw it out the window because he's a litterer. I just don't think, I just don't think he's going to change.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Let's go back a few slides. Whoops, too far. Okay, in terms of somebody drinking and driving with a half pint. If you're somebody who's caught in the throes of alcohol, yeah, you might do that. But one of the whole points of drinking a nip is to be able to drink and not be caught with an open container. We know that. And I know that through studies. I know that through my work with substance abusers. If people go to half pints, it'll actually decrease alcohol consumption. And there's plenty of studies to show that. I listed some. I'll quote some. From the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. Studies determined that increases in the total price of alcohol can reduce drinking and driving and its consequences among all age groups, lower the frequency of disease, injuries, and deaths related to alcohol use and abuse, and reduce alcohol-related violence and other crimes. The CDC. Evidence shows an association between higher prices and reduction in alcohol-related harms, including motor vehicle crashes, fatalities, alcohol-impaired driving, and all causes of mortality. So you keep talking about that portion of drinkers who are hardcore alcoholics. I get it. I worked with them. But that's not the only people who are throwing those things out the window. And if you have a half pint, most people aren't going to take the risk of driving with an open container. And they're not going to be throwing it out the window. And frankly, unfortunately, not that that'll help litter. If they did, that can be recycled. These things can't.
So responding again, and I'm not going to, I want to end this because this is not really about alcoholism, but
Well,
I work for
it is to a
I work for the
degree.
courts and I go to training sessions with seminars, so I know a little bit about alcoholism too. And I can tell you, a lot of people regulate their drinking. with nips.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, they regulate it with nips. But I can tell you this, one thing about an alcoholic, they're going to drink,
Absolutely.
okay? Whether they, if they can't get a nip, they're going to get a half pint or a pint. And they're going to drink in that car. They don't care. So that's my only argument on that.
Yep.
But I would like to, because I don't want this to look like more than it is. I represent everybody in the town of Plymouth, not just certain groups. And I just think this will hurt our local businesses. I would like to see a statewide ban if it's, detrimental, and let's get that done. And I think I would like to see a petition the state to try and get it done. In the meantime,
23 years we've been doing that.
well, then they must not think it's as dangerous as you say it is. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying I don't think this is the way to go about it. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring up a couple, I want to hear the other side of this so we get all the information.
Mr. Blitzer, you may.
I'd like to bring Mr. Pioppi up, and also you can come up too, yeah.
You can ask him.
I just want the board to hear the other side of the equation here.
Charlie's dog with a
Good evening, Board of Selectmen, Town of Plymouth. Peter Balboni for the record, owner of Pioppi's Package Store. I've been serving Plymouth and its residents for the past 90 years of family business. I see, with all due respects, the gentleman, a lot of these facts would be disputed. I see he references Robert Millian. He's the head counsel for MassPac. I've talked to him several times myself in the past week. He'd be here himself tonight. He's in Colorado, however. But there's a lot of facts there that can be disputed, and he would. But my first point is that many consumers, as mentioned, do buy the 50 milliliter containers to regulate how much they consume at any designated time. By eliminating this option, you will force one to purchase a larger size container, resulting in higher consumption and possible alcohol abuse, amongst other detrimental actions. They will buy it, they'll put it in the car, and they will, instead of drinking, we have many customers that come in, and they might just buy one or two, and that's it, because they know that's all they can handle. They buy a whole bottle, they will drink the whole bottle. The second point is, these nips are a legal size approved by the ABCC. By eliminating them in Plymouth, you'll be driving tax dollars away from Plymouth into surrounding towns, assuming the actual statistics actually prove that the nip business is a large percentage of independent stores business, anywhere from 10 to 15% and up to 50% in some of these businesses. Well, last year alone, there was over 7 million units sold in Massachusetts. So it is a big chunk of the store's income. At an industry that averages $42,000 a year for their employees, a 10 to 15% loss in these times where our expenses are going up and up will affect liquor stores. We might not go out of business, but we might have to lay people off, and it will affect the bottom line. Consumers of any business who easily dispose of things and throw things out through the window are going to, they throw out bottles, straws, lottery tickets, all of the cigarettes. Banning one of these very items, one other item out of all of them is not going to clean up the litter. It's just going to replace the nips with larger plastic or glass bottles. Again, Plymouth is filled with tourists, and visitors who frequent here do enjoy, as mentioned earlier, enjoy their nips. When they go back to the room, they mix a drink. They don't want to buy a whole bottle. It's also a way for them to try new products that come out. Instead of spending a lot of money on one thing, you can see if you like it or not. We all want to clean Plymouth, and we all want to be environmentally conscious. So I feel there's a better way and there's alternatives to resolve this problem. This matter needs to be dealt with on a state level. We need to pressure the Senate and the legislators to move. I have been in contact with both suppliers, distributors, and the Senate, and cross our fingers, it looks like it's coming to a head in 2024. The suppliers don't want to lose the business, so something is going to happen, we hope. I ask the board to please not support this ban on nips. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board for the presenter or for anyone else? Mr. Helm?
I have a question for Mr. Stone. Oh, there's somebody else.
Okay. Here we go. Fine.
Mr. Stone first.
Yes?
Mr. Stone, you mentioned, possibly not on a slide, but you spoke that, that this would decrease drunken driving. Do you have any statistics from any of the communities that have banned NIPS that evidence a reduction in arrests or apprehensions or any actions around drunken drivers?
In terms of NIPS, no.
In terms of NIPS?
Yeah, no, because I spoke with our own chief who, 3 years ago, he referred me to Captain Manuel. And what he said is it's pretty obvious to them that that is an association, just as people in New Bedford said. But you have to catch somebody with the nip, open nip in the car. And these are being thrown out the window. So statistically, it's just hard to do any research that'll show that. So you rely on things like Chelsea's data in terms of, and Wareham in terms of the decrease in alcohol-related behaviors in general.
Not to disagree with Officer Manuel, who told you that, but you do not need to have an open container of alcohol in a car to be stopped for drunken driving and cited for it.
Right,
So
I thought you were talking about...
I don't understand why somebody drinking nips in a car would need to have one on them.
They wouldn't.
So there's you didn't take a look at Chelsea to see if there'd been a reduction in DUIs over the same period of time?
Chelsea didn't have those stats. They were looking at the ambulance results and the hospital results.
Okay,
and
so
the
that's
emergency calls.
Okay.
I don't know of any data that has that specifically from any town that has introduced a ban. But again, if you look at Chelsea's data in terms of alcohol use in general, and again, if you look at it anecdotally, there is an association between the two. Can we prove it? No.
Thank you.
And Mr. Helm, I would, since I have direct information in regards to that, I can help answer the question posed to Mr. Stone. So in my day job, I take court-appointed criminal cases in Plymouth District Court, which covers Plymouth as well as several other surrounding communities. Mr. Bletzer used to yell at me to talk to custodies more frequently than I did over non-custodies before they left, which was my priority. But in any event, a large number of folks that are arrested for an OUI were drinking from NIPS, at least out of Plymouth District Court. And that covers not just Plymouth, but Plymouth is the largest single town that contributes to the workload of Plymouth District Court. I have also spent the last 8+ years working in the Recovery Court, formerly known as the Drug Court, which deals with substance use-related issues, both drugs and alcohol. And a number of the participants in that setting have acquired or sustained a problematic drinking behaviors through the use of NIPS as a primary source, because it was easier for them to hide that from significant others, from employers, from family members that want them to stop. And some of them had been formerly people that drank higher quantities and thought drinking a nip wouldn't be a big deal. Then they fail a court-ordered scram breath test or a counter breath test by a probation officer. So NIPS are a significant contributor to the acquisition and sustaining of a problematic relationship with alcohol in this community. From my experience of 8+ years being one of approximately 25 court-appointed lawyers, that frequently takes cases in Plymouth District Court. Any other questions from any other members of the board? Mr. Bletzer, did you have a
No, I'd
further
like to have
question?
this gentleman step up.
Mr. Bletzer would like to know what you would like to say.
Hi, I'm Jay Sorcinelli. I'm co-owner of Cedarville Wine and Spirits in South Plymouth, and we're opposed to the nip ban. And we understand that it's a problem with litter, but we'd like to remind everyone that plastic water bottles and fast food containers are also a significant portion of the litter stream, and we feel that it should all be addressed instead of just going after one litter stream. So we feel a ban on nips, unless enacted statewide, is highly prejudicial to the businesses within the town and will in most cases not solve the problem, but will merely drive the customers over the town lines to Bourne, Sandwich, Kingston. A nip ban will hurt every liquor store within the town and will be a boon to the stores in the adjacent communities. We hope that you feel that your liquor stores in the town are loyal and generous supporters of the number of charitable civic organizations within the town, and will consider the impact on our stores before you vote on this issue.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board for anyone?
About a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions from any other members of the board? Seeing no questions, you haven't been asked a question. Does anyone have a question for this gentleman? Seeing no questions, do I have a motion from any members of the board in relation to Article 15? I will remind members of the board that motions are always made in the affirmative.
I motion that we approve moving Article 15 to town meeting consideration.
Mr. Helm has moved. I will second. It has been moved. It has been seconded. Any discussion from any members of the board about whether or not we should approve the inclusion of Article 15 on the fall town meeting warrant?
I'll say it one more time. I would love to think that this would stop littering. I hate littering, okay? I live on a main street. I see it all the time. But it's a very small percentage of it is nips. And I think I don't like that we're taking it out on one industry. By the way, I was for the plastic bags. I was for that ban. But we're taking it out on one industry, and I quite frankly don't think it's going to work. It's not going to stop. The reasons why they're given, drunk driving, litter, it's not going to stop that. And the gentleman just brought up about the plastic bottles. Those aren't biodegradable either, and they're out there too. So I think this is anti-business, and I can't vote to support it. And I know it's not popular in this room, but I have a record of voting for the environment. I did as a town meeting member, and I've done it as a selectman. But this one particular article, I just can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bletzer. Any other discussion from members of the board? Seeing none, I will contribute. Although I understand the concerns of local businesses, and I do wish that it was a statewide ban, I think that would be preferable because that would make it a level playing field, as Mr. Bletzer said, so I agree with him on that. Nevertheless, I am in favor of a ban of nips in the town of Plymouth. I believe that nips primarily to me are a source of public health concerns. I have seen a number of folks in both my personal and professional life ruin their lives through nips, perpetuate alcohol problems, acquire alcohol problems, create divisions amongst their significant others, their family members. I've had multiple family members plead with me to try and get help for their loved one in relation to their addiction to alcohol that is perpetuated by nips. And I understand that the banning of nips in the town of Plymouth will not solve the problem of alcoholism in this community, but it makes it easier for Plymouth residents to acquire a drinking problem. It makes it easier for them to sustain a drinking problem because they are easily hideable from members of their family, their employers, their significant others. And it does increase public safety concerns because one of the things that I have noticed representing people charged with OUI-related offenses in the town of Plymouth and in other communities is that for whatever reason, people that commit OUI's offenses tend to be very concerned about having an open container of alcohol in the vehicle. They're not as concerned with driving while intoxicated, with when they get pulled over at submitting to field sobriety tests or breathalyzers, but having an open container in that vehicle is a chief concern for them. For whatever reason, either they think it's prima facie evidence for the crime, or they just have a phobia for that. Whatever the reason is, the anecdotes for those people, that is a big priority for them, and it is very easy for them to justify purchasing nips to drink in a car because they can discard that easily. They can also discard it at work. They can hide it more easily amongst their person. I think it's a significant problem. Mr. Brindisi and I had the opportunity to go to Japan a couple of weeks ago. In Japan, there are not public trash barrels very often in public. You are expected, if you generate trash in public, to carry that trash with you, to throw it away at your home. In America, if we don't see a trash can in 500 yards, we think, well, the government must want me to throw this out here. I think that's a cultural failing that we have, and I agree that eliminating nips will not fully solve litter as a problem, but I think it could reduce it, but I'm primarily interested in the public health concerns. I wish, again, that this were a statewide ban, but I don't have control over what the Commonwealth does in the general court. I only have the ability to influence policy on the town-wide level, and I think public health concerns are more important to me personally than business concerns when the two do conflict. Generally, I'm very in favor of economic development and what's good for our businesses, but I think our primary concern and consideration should be what's good for our people. And for those reasons, I am strongly in favor of a ban of nips in the town of Plymouth. Any other discussion from any other members of the board?
I'd like to say one final thing if I could.
Mr. Bletzer?
I'd like to get a report from when they clean up next year about nips, how many nips you find, because I hope I'm wrong, but you're going to see nips everywhere. They're going to come from different towns. People that like nips will get the nips, and they'll bring them into Plymouth. And I'll tell you what else you're going to see. You're going to see more plastic half pints. I guarantee it. And to think, Kevin, that it's going to stop littering, it's going to stop drunk driving, wow. Wouldn't that be great if it was that easy? But anyway, I've said what I had to say. I think it will hurt our local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bletzer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Once again, through the roll, Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote as to whether or not we should include Article 15 on the fall town meeting warrant?
I vote no.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion does carry. Article 15 will be included in the fall town meeting warrant. Thank you to everyone who came and presented on either side. That brings us into public comment. Prior to the beginning of public comment, since this is my first meeting that I have chaired, I will lay out the ground rules for public comment when I am chairing. Select Board policy has given members of the public 3 minutes to speak in public comment at all of our meetings. You will be given those 3 minutes, of course. When you reach 3 minutes, I will give you the opportunity, if you still have more to say, to speak for an additional minute if you choose to do so, or if you think you need longer than a minute, it will require a motion, a second, and an affirmative vote of the board in order to speak for longer than an additional minute. And if you do not get a motion in a second, or if that vote fails, sadly, your speaking time will have concluded. So with that in mind, anyone wishing to make public comment, please stand up to the microphone. Mr. Malaguti, you are both the closest and the most upright, so you get first go.
Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2. So I actually have a couple, and one just came in my mind just recently. It's always been common practice over the years, myself as a town meeting member, that when articles come before the Select Board and also Advisory and Finance for a discussion, that there's usually allowed comment from the public if their hand is raised or if they have anything. My hand was raised, I was never acknowledged for the last article of that, and I just want to make sure that the common practice is not going to be hindered in the future. So with that, I had an important question that actually was never asked and actually would have been great to know for if the prior article goes before town meeting and passes. Is there a phased implementation like there was for the plastic bag ban, where there was a 6-month year cycle for that because liquor stores are going to have to get rid of their inventory, and you need to actually have a phased-in approach where that you can't just ban it overnight, because then liquor stores have to figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to just dump it down the drain, which would also be detrimental to the environment as well too? So those are the things that actually needed to be done. If it's not included within the article, then I think the article would need to be amended or would somewhat be null and void in a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malaguti. Mr. Lyden is pointing to someone else.
I thought maybe Mr. Stone would like to respond to Mr. Malaguti.
Mr. Stone, would you care to make public comment?
Yeah, just briefly, I believe the way it's written, they would have till July of next year to work down their inventory.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. All right, Mr. Lyden, would you care to make public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, I'm here wearing two hats. One is the Vice Chair of Distinguished Visitors Board. This year, we were asked, we had a very short time to get the trip ready for Shishigahama, our sister city. And while we were making the arrangements and everything else, we realized how everything has gotten so expensive. And it's really tough to be able to afford everything that we have to do, sending our delegation to Japan. But in the spring, they're coming here, or probably next summer. Expenses have really gone high. They're crazy. And so the Visitor Service Board, which I am chair, made a motion to raise the fee from the contribution of the Visitor Service Board from $5,000 to $10,000. And I'm requesting that the Select Board do the same. Mr. Canty, the town manager, went to Japan. They see how our delegation is treated, and they're coming here, like I said, next year, and I think we should reciprocate in the same manner that they treated us. And to do this, the board needs more money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyden. Mr. Arienti.
Good evening. First, I have a question before anything. I've got two items I'd like to speak on. Do I get 3 minutes on each? Or
3 total.
3 total. All right. Well, my name is Bill Arienti. I'm the chairperson of Precinct 6 Town Meeting. I stand here not to criticize the Select Board or anyone, but I don't have in my position of town meeting member, I really don't have that authority or that capacity. So what I'd like to speak about is how the issue before us with the Attorney General affects the town. And what it does, I hate to say it, but it exacerbates an issue, and that's the issue of a diminishing level of trust in government. Now, I know that I don't know each of you personally. I know some of you personally. And I know that the jobs you do are great. You really do. You dedicate yourself to make this town much better. And if a mistake was made inadvertently, I have no problem with that. But the problem being is that when a mistake like that is made, the people see it. The people don't see the work. The people don't see the debate that you do. The people don't see all the hard effort you put into it. The people see the appearance. And when the people see the appearance, they immediately run with it. And it goes, and it diminishes their continued faith in government. And I think that we need to somehow restore that faith and that confidence in them as quickly as possible. I think the best way to do it would be to come out with a full report of what happened at that meeting, the executive session, and answer some questions The questions of, number one, will the $1.3 million that the town waived for to provide water, will that come out of the taxpayers' pockets? Where will that come from? It may come from free cash, but free cash is paid for by the taxpayers. So I think we have to address that. I think we also have to address, was any mitigation put on the developer for the sidewalks down at, I can't even think of the road, Plimpton Road, that we voted for at 2022 to put in? Their buildings will directly affect the foot traffic in that area. And we're paying for those sidewalks. Each taxpayer is paying for those sidewalks. They're going to add more foot traffic. I believe that they should have been given some type of mitigation to pay to lessen the burden on us taxpayers.
Mr. Arienti, you have exceeded 3 minutes. Would you like an additional minute to conclude your remarks, or would you request a vote for further time than that?
I would like to ask for a vote for further time, please.
How much further time would you like?
3 minutes, please. And it won't take that long.
Mr. Arienti would like to speak for an additional 3 minutes. Would any member of the board wish to make a motion to extend his speaking time by an additional 3 minutes?
I motion so.
Mr. Helm has moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it as long as Mr. Brindisi can respond to a couple of things that he said, if he feels comfortable.
Well, we can't make a conditional second. You could second it, but
I'll second it, but I encourage to talk about the booster.
Thank you, Mr. Bletzer. So it has been moved, it has been seconded. Any discussion about whether or not Mr. Arienti's speaking time should be extended for an additional 3 minutes? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for a vote. Once again, through the roll, Mr. Bletzer, how do you vote as to whether or not we should extend Mr. Arienti's speaking time by an additional 3 minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Helm?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. Mr. Arienti, you have the floor for an additional 3 minutes.
Thank you. The clerk of the town has sent each and every, I believe, chairperson, or I don't know, every member of the committees, the rules and regulations on open meeting laws, which is a great assistance to all of us. But if you read that guide, it also says that the Attorney General's office will offer in-person or virtual meetings or virtual presentations to go over it. Personally, I think that the town should take advantage of that offer and should offer every person who runs a meeting in this town to sit, watch, and take notes or do whatever, be part of that in-person or virtual meeting, to be able to make sure that at no time we're going to have a situation like this again. I think it'd be a great advantage to all of us. And now I'm just going to skip over to something. The nip bottle ban is something we've been talking about it on a couple different committees I'm on. And I have drafted a piece of legislation. As a matter of fact, I spoke with Mr. Brothers about it. And what the legislation is, it's not a ban. I personally don't like bans. I know the people will go next town over or whatever. But I think this ban that I have, this piece of legislation, I recommended $1 deposit on every nip bottle. Now, people will throw a nickel out the window. People will throw a dime out the window. But you're not going to see too many people throw $1 out the window. And when they do throw $1 out the window, you're going to see a couple kids running, fighting over that piece of trash to bring it to the liquor store to get $1 back. It also puts a return to cities and towns. After a 3-year period, the money that's collected that's not taken back from deposits will go back to the cities and towns who put it in. I've already spoken to the members of the House and members of the Senate about it. They like the idea. There's some hesitation, but there is some movement on it. And I think that hopefully we will be able to put something like this in so people's freedoms are not infringed upon, and we have a better hold on the trash. I pick up nip bottles every day on White Horse Beach Road. And I think that something like this would help everybody involved. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Arienti. 251. All right, Mr. Cirque, would you wish to make public comment at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rich Cirque, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. As you know, the Attorney General has determined that the town violated the open meeting law in several ways. One, by holding meetings for improper purposes. Two, by not posting meetings as required by the open meeting law, not posting them properly. And three, by not creating minutes of their meetings in a timely manner. And tonight's administrative notes included 25 separate sets of minutes going back to September of 2022 that were filed tonight, and that's hardly timely. I want to just comment specifically on a narrow point, but I think it's important. Mr. Canty, you stated that the Attorney General found that the violations were unintentional. What the Attorney General found was, I'm reading from the letter, we must determine whether the board's and the ZBA's violations were, as the complainant claims, intentional. And it goes on to say, we decline to find that the violation was intentional. That's not a finding that it was unintentional. It just says that they could not agree that the finding was intentional. It's a subtle difference, but I think it's important. They never found that the violations were, they never found that the violations were in violation of the open meeting law.
Thank you, Mr. Cirque.
Mr. Chairman, we also have Pat Edelman with us on Zoom as well.
Thank you. I'll take the physically present folks first, and then I'll circle back, but thank you. Ms. Davis, would you care to make public comment?
Yes, Ginny Davis, Precinct 4. And I'm just going to make a couple of comments regarding Article 15. Regardless of the financial, I think the bottom line is really the public health issues. One of it's contributing to alcoholism, but the other is the public health and pollution of the environment of toxic things. These little bottles fall into the sewer, end up in the ocean, the fish, everything. We now, as the presenter of the article pointed out, little articles of plastic have been found in our hearts and other places and in newborns. Not just, of course, from these bottles, but from all plastic. But these are just, they're everywhere. And they don't, you know, they're harder to pick up. They fall into the sewer. And so I do hope that town meeting will pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any other members of the public that are physically present wishing to give comment? I see Mr. Joe Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. Thank you to the board for your time. I just wanted to say a quick word about the master plan. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Bolton and all of the folks who worked on that task force for the hard work that they've given us in the town over the past 18 months. I can't emphasize how important I think that a master plan is for the future of this town. I think we're at an inflection point as a nation, and in particular, I think that Plymouth is changing. I also wanted to say a word about your role, the select board's role. You talked about enforcement. I think, I can't remember whether it was Mr. Helm or Mr. Blitzer, but someone asked about, well, how do we enforce? Well, Mr. Canty has an agenda. And if the work of the select board is in sync with the work of the planning board and the planning department and of the task force that I'm hoping will be in charge of working with a consultant to take us through the production of the plan, then you folks have every opportunity to use a bully pulpit and to drag us through whatever challenges we have to go through to actually implement the elements of the plan. So, you know, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to your help and a very successful effort at a master plan. Thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Any other members of the public physically present? Yes, Mr. DiNardo.
Good evening, Al Donato, Precinct 17. Mr. Chairman, I'm here to talk about the open meeting law violation. I have to give credit to the town clerk. There's been a lot of mopping up of the open meeting laws and posting of meetings. A lot of this stuff was not happening before, and I give credit to the town manager bringing this up some months ago. There was even an instance where this body would not second the motion. You do that now in order to be discussion, and if all five want to vote, it gets up. So that's changed. But I really say to this board, how does someone like myself that believes in openness is supposed to respond to this? If you recall, last year I pushed on the floor of town meeting for in-house counsel. The board had proposed that for an amount. I still stuck to town meeting approving that for $1. The purpose of that is that boards would get good legal counsel. So I say to myself, what sort of legal advice did the select board get last year on this meeting? It was a very important meeting because we're dealing with water issues in Red Brook and town-wide. So the fact is, the AG said that that was not one of the 10. There are 10 purposes of how we can meet in executive session. And the public needs to know that's to shield, that's to protect the town on our behalf, not to shield the public from knowledge. So that did not fall under the 10 guidelines. Those are to negotiate land or union negotiation on our behalf, not to shield the public. Water is too much of an important issue for this community. I would like to see this select board hopefully appoint a water commission that will be beyond the politics of the town and to give us the true cost of water and the needs of water. The town's own report said that water was a major issue for this development. So I'm not going to go any further than that, but I hope that this will not happen in the future, and that we all understand executive session is on our behalf to protect the community and the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiNardo. Any other members of the public physically present wishing to give comment at this time? Seeing none, I understand that Ms. Pat Adelman is virtually present. I can see her on the far screen. Pat, would you care to give public comment at this time?
Yes, thank you very much. Pat Adelman, Precinct 12. I applaud the Master Plan Task Force, and I agree with all their goals, especially the one about implementation. However, my question is, who is going to implement it? There's no mechanism to hire any additional planners. Every time we've asked a question about why something like the gravel removal, why it hasn't been investigated or followed through, it's always, we don't have enough staff. So if we pass this master plan, $500,000, will we have the staff to implement the master plan? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Adelman. Anthony, are there any other members of the public that are joining us virtually that wish to speak?
Not at this time.
All right, and one last call for anyone physically present that wishes to speak in public comment. Hearing and seeing none, we will move forward with the agenda. That brings us into the town manager's report. Mr. Brindisi?
Great, thanks, everybody. So I want to focus my energy this evening just highlighting a lot of the great work of some key members throughout our organization. In particular, I want to bring up the hard work of David Gould and Tiffany Park. We haven't made a public announcement yet, so this will be the first time. They were able to secure a federal transportation grant for $2 million. This grant will be used to reconstruct the Stone Arch Bridge. So that's the bridge that is on the rear access road of Morton Park, right off of Billington Street. So right now, that bridge, it actually has a weight capacity issue. So again, $2 million for their hard work. That's $2 million. We don't have to go to town meeting and seek funds to reconstruct. So we'll enter the design and permitting stage on that, and over the next 18 months, hopefully break ground sometime in late '24. I also want to mention Mr. Lee Hartman, who pulled together the first of 2 informational sessions regarding the MBTA communities. This meeting was held last night here in this building. There'll be a second meeting held on September 11th at Plymouth South High. That's an opportunity for the community to understand what does this new MBTA communities law, what does that mean? How is it going to impact us as a community? And take that information back. I think we're going to have a joint planning board, select board meeting probably sometime in late September, so we can go over the information that was found and start to put together a plan on how we're going to comply with that law. So again, a lot of thanks to Mr. Hartman for his work relative to the MBTA communities. I wanted to mention Michelle Brady, who's done a lot of work, as you know, over at the Cal. Continuing to offer new and innovative programs at the Cal. Most recently, the Cal was awarded, along with the Duxbury Senior Center, a $66,000 grant around a new program for mental health, and it's to provide individual mental health counseling services to seniors at the Cal. This grant has partnered with Bridgewater State University to bring master-level clinicians to the senior center. There'll be a clinician there starting in September through May, 2 days per week, to provide mental health services to all of our Plymouth seniors. And so the hope is that this is kind of a pilot project that we will move forward as a national model, or even maybe potentially a statewide model as well. And then in addition to that, Michelle's been able to secure another program. It's a community Alzheimer's respite and engagement program, otherwise known as CARE. Michelle and her team at the Cal partnered with the Alzheimer's Family Support Center to bring an accredited day program to the Cal facility. This is a weekly program that provides safe enrichment program for those with dementia-related diseases. And what I like about this is much needed respite time for the caregivers. So it gives the caregivers some time off while those folks dealing with dementia are working through this new Alzheimer's program. So this program is held Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's completely free, and it also includes lunch at the Cal as well. So we would encourage folks who are interested in that to sign up ahead of time, because there's certainly limited space. As many of you may have heard, the American Cruise Lines came into the harbor this past Saturday around 5 p.m. Overall, it was uneventful. The ship was ushered in by the harbor master, our fireboat, and our police boat, in order to ensure safe passage into the harbor and a safe tie-up. The boat then departed the next day. They're going to come in again this Saturday and the following Saturday. We're going to use those 3 days to determine whether or not we should enter into a long-term agreement with the American Cruise Lines, and then more importantly, make sure that anything we may have learned, lessons learned during the first arrival and second and third arrival, we can fix those so that in the future, things continue to go smoothly. So again, a lot of hard work by Chief Flynn and Harbor Master Chad Hunter to ensure that that went without a hitch. And then last, I want to bring up two more quick items. So as you all know, the governor announced this emergency order regarding migrants. And you've seen there's been news stories in New York City with migrants lining the streets. A lot of cities and towns are struggling as to how to respond to this, I would say, not just a statewide crisis, but certainly a national crisis. So as you know, we welcomed last December time period migrants to our community. We continue to have 28 families here in town and 102 individuals. The wraparound services is continued to be provided by NeighborWorks, which is a community-based organization. Right now, we don't expect any additional new migrants, but again, that's what we're being told. Christian Horvath is our emergency managing director, and he's taken the lead on engaging the state to keep us up to date so that in the future, if more migrants were to come here, we're better prepared than we were a year ago. And so last, I'll just end that I'll be working with Chief Foley on conducting a tour at the West Plymouth Fire Station. As you know, it's almost near completion of its renovation, so I'll be reaching out to the board to try to find a time that works for everybody if you're all interested. Pending any questions, that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Brindisi. Questions, Mr. Helm?
Yeah, Derek, you mentioned that we're going to use last weekend and the next 2 weekends to kind of make our determination about American Cruise Lines and expanding. Are we also going to get any feedback from American Cruise Lines on our cooperation and also on their passengers about whether they felt this was a worthwhile stop?
Yeah, I mean, I hope, so I'm trying to set up a meeting with them this week, just to do like a hot wash or an after-action review of this Saturday visit. But I would expect over the course of the next coming months, we'll hear back from American Cruise Lines as to whether or not they think this is a worthy endeavor for themselves as well. I can tell you, just from talking to some folks anecdotally about the passengers, what I was told last Saturday night was that the passengers said that Plymouth, of the stops they have already visited, Plymouth was their favorite harbor to date.
Thank you. Mr. Bletzer?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on what you said about the American Cruise Lines. I was down there, as I know Kevin was down there too, and it was very exciting. We made history in Plymouth, bringing a cruise ship in like this, and it was smooth. I mean, I don't pretend to be a captain, but that thing came in 240 feet, and people kept saying, "Where's the guys on the pier that are going to take the lines?" And that thing, he came in and used the bow suppressors and just, I've never seen anything like it, pulled right into that dock, just like a cushion. And in the end, the concerns that the fishermen had was their winches, and all three winches, they were all wide open. They kept their distance, so it was a great landing, and I'm sure there might have been some things that I don't know about, but I'm sure you're going to hear about it. But it looked pretty good to me. It looked very smooth, and it's exciting. Senator Murray and a delegation, Congressman Keating, they worked hard to get the millions and millions of dollars to get that harbor dredged. And it was for this reason, to getting small cruise ships that come into Plymouth. And, the harbor is, it's for all the residents of Plymouth. The fishermen are a part of it, they're a big part of it, but there's, the tourism, is a big part of it too. It's our biggest industry. So I thought it was a win Saturday. I was very proud to be a resident of Plymouth, and especially an official, so it was great.
Yeah.
The other thing is the migrants, is the new human, Health and Human Service, were they working with these folks, or is it just the state?
We have not engaged using town forces with the migrants. Primarily, the reason is because the state went ahead and executed a contract with this community-based organization known as NeighborWorks, and it's NeighborWorks that's providing all those
Okay,
social services, those wraparound services, ensuring they have, food and shelter and things of that nature. So the only engagement really at the town level is with the school department.
But we're getting reciprocated for that, right?
We're not getting any reimbursement at this time.
For the
only-
cost of
The
the-
schools are. The schools get,
I mean,
yeah,
school-
the
well,
schools
I
get some
call we,
reimbursement.
that's Plymouth.
Yeah, the schools
That's
are.
what
On
I
the
mean.
town side, as far as, we haven't had any events or incidences that we would have to take to the state level for like a public safety
Because you know,
reimbursement.
it's always, how much is it costing the taxpayers? You hear that negative stuff, and I hate that. And it's not.
It's not other than public
It's
education.
not costing the residents. It's not coming out of residential taxes.
That's right.
So I want to make that clear. So, all right, great, thanks.
All right, any other questions for the town manager? Hearing and seeing none, we will move forward. Select Board open discussion. Any new business that any members of the board would like to bring up at this time? Okay. Do we have any letters?
The letters are all in email form that you've received. Most of them were regarding, all of them are regarding the NIPS.
They were, yes.
So, all 25 or 30 of them.
Yes.
That's okay, we're still getting them too, or I am, so.
All right. Fair enough. And any old business? Mr. Helm?
I brought this up before, but I would just like to remind the board, the town manager and the assistant town manager, that I feel we need to put on an upcoming agenda a reappearance from the Water Conservation Committee to discuss once again their suggestions, which we postponed acting upon, and I think we need to act upon them. It's time. It's been several months. We've had plenty of time to bring them back and consider it. We need to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Helm. Any other old business? Hearing and seeing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn for the evening?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bletzer has moved.
Second.
Mr. Helm has seconded. I will call for the vote. Mr. Bletzer, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Mr. Helm?
He voted for me.
Well-
He voted twice.
He's just very enthusiastic.
Okay.
You make a vote.
Yes.
All right, and I will vote yes. It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you.